You've probably got Reddit open in another tab right now. Maybe Discord too. This video is about what's actually living on those platforms, and the websites you'd never click on purpose. Same internet you're using right now. You've either been lucky so far, or you were unlucky enough to be there for some of this. "26 entries, 5 tiers. From the FBI running a CP site for days, to a site terrorists use to post real-life executions. These are some of the most disturbing websites on the internet. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Tier 1. Playpen. Playpen was one of the darkest corners of the darknet, and that's saying something. Launched in August 2014, it operated on the Tor network, where anonymity is the default, and morality often goes to die. The site's creator was Stephen W. Chase, a 58-year-old from Florida who made it his mission to build a digital playground for predators. In just 6 months, Playpen exploded. By the time authorities caught up, it had over 215,000 registered users and hosted more than 23,000 images and videos of child mistreatment, some involving toddlers. Users didn't just lurk, they posted, commented, encouraged each other, and shared content. Every upload meant more abuse, and the community kept growing. The only reason the site got busted was because Chase slipped up. Despite all the layers of encryption and anonymity Tor is known for, he accidentally exposed his IP address. That gave the FBI just enough to track him down and seize the site's servers. But that's where the story gets even darker. Instead of immediately shutting Playpen down, the FBI made the controversial call to keep it running for exactly 13 more days. Under Operation Pacifier, they took over the site, kept all the material live, and reportedly even improved its performance. Yes, the FBI made a site hosting child exploitation material load faster, but they say it was for a good cause. I'll leave that to you to decide. During those 13 days, the Bureau used a piece of malware called a network investigative technique to identify users. It bypassed Tor's anonymity, infected their systems, and logged their real IP addresses. That sting operation led to more than 900 arrests across the globe. Chase got 30 years in prison. His 2 top admins got 20 each, but the fallout didn't end there. Critics, including the Electronic Frontier Foundation, blasted the operation for essentially distributing CP to catch people looking at CP. The warrant that allowed the malware was supposed to cover suspects in Virginia, but it ended up infecting users worldwide. In one case, the FBI even dropped charges because revealing how the malware worked would have compromised their methods. What started as a victory against one of the internet's worst websites turned into a legal and ethical minefield. Operation Pacifier forced the world to ask a really deep question. If you fight monsters by becoming one, did you really win? Silk Road. Before the darknet became a household boogeyman, Silk Road had already built itself into a full-blown black market empire. Launched in 2011 by Ross Ulbricht, better known online as Dread Pirate Roberts, the site lived on the Tor network, where identities were hidden and Bitcoin was king. On the surface, it looked like a simple forum complete with product listings, vendor ratings, and user reviews. But underneath, it was basically the Amazon of illegal drugs. Within months, you could buy anything from LSD and heroin to Adderall and synthetic cannabinoids. There were forged IDs, fake passports, and even pirated erotica for sale. Everything came with customer service. Users left reviews like they were on Yelp, and even posted shipping photos and commentary like, "Fast delivery, clean high, would trip again." Silk Road didn't allow weapons or CP, but let's be real, that wasn't about morals. The site ran on the belief that people should be free to consume whatever they wanted. Laws be damned. That libertarian dream quickly turned into a calculated business. Ulbricht, despite his idealist branding, took more and more control as things grew. He started obsessing over uptime, order flow, and user trust to the point that the site started using automated escrow to hold payments until delivery was confirmed. At its peak in 2013, Silk Road had facilitated over $1.2 billion in transactions. It had its own economy, its own rules, and a massive target on its back. When the FBI finally caught up to Ulbricht, they arrested him in a San Francisco library while his laptop was still open. We're talking Silk Road admin panel loaded, messages in progress, transaction files, chat logs, and his plans to allegedly have several people killed open. None of those murder-for-hire plots went through, but prosecutors ran with it anyway because it showed how deep the rabbit hole went. The site was shut down later that year. Ulbricht was sentenced to 2 life terms without parole, and over 170,000 bitcoins were seized. It was worth millions back then, and billions now. Silk Road 2.0 popped up shortly after, but it didn't last. Others came and went, but none matched the original's legacy. Silk Road wasn't just a marketplace. It was proof that the internet could, and eventually would, sell you absolutely anything. Also, believe it or not, there's a site deeper down this iceberg that claimed you could grow a kitten in a jar. And some people actually believed it. Shocking, I know. In fact, it's almost as bad as what's coming next. Rotten.com. At first glance, Rotten.com looked boring. Just a plain white background, blue links, no images, and no flashy graphics. It kind of looked like someone's high school project that got left behind in the 90s. But that bland front page was a trap, because behind it was one of the darkest rabbit holes the internet ever coughed up. Launched in 1996, back when the internet was still the digital Wild West and content moderation was a myth, Rotten.com became the unofficial museum of the grotesque. If it was violent, disturbing, or straight up nightmare material, it probably lived on Rotten. Dead bodies? Check. Crime scene photos? Check. Autopsies, car crashes, suicides, decapitations? All of the above. Oh, and there were no trigger warnings and no context. Just click and cry or violently throw up. And the worst part is you never know what you were about to see. You'd click a link called something vague like accident, and 3 seconds later you'd be face to face with a photo of a bloated corpse pulled from a river, or what's left of someone's skull after a high-speed motorcycle crash, or maybe a shotgun blast. No one really checked. Some of the photos were real, pulled from morgues, forensic files, or sent in by users who thought emailing graphic images to a stranger was normal behavior. Others were completely mislabeled or fake, but that didn't really matter. Accuracy wasn't the point. Shock value was. If the site could trick you into clicking something that made you physically recoil, that was a win. Even royalty wasn't off limits. A grainy image claiming to show Princess Diana's corpse was uploaded despite being proven fake, because Rotten knew people would still click. It didn't matter if it was true or not, because as the saying goes, curiosity always wins. But nothing crossed the line quite like what happened after 9/11. While most of the world was mourning, Rotten uploaded photos of people falling from the Twin Towers and titled the section Swan Dive. That wasn't just tasteless, it was intentionally cruel. Of course, there were also videos on the website, and somehow those were a lot worse. Pulled from cell phones, CCTV, medical footage, and the far corners of early internet forums. You can find everything from people being burned alive to full-on autopsies. Real ones. You might watch a body get dissected before your brain even processes what's happening. Naturally, families were furious. Lawsuits rolled in, takedown requests, threats, investigations, you name it, all came pouring down on the site. But Rotten didn't budge. For years, it held the line and was well on the way to becoming one of the most hated websites online. Eventually, though, the internet evolved. Social media took over, laws got tighter, and the culture shifted. Rotten quietly disappeared sometime in the 2010s with no announcement or apology. It was just gone. But the damage was already done. By the time it vanished, Rotten had inspired an entire genre of shock sites and introduced an entire generation to the idea that the internet could show you things you really weren't supposed to see. This was bad, but there's another site coming that didn't just show pictures, it showed everything. LiveLeak. LiveLeak launched in 2006, and it was built by the same people behind Ogrish.com, an uncensored site known for posting graphic photos and videos of just about every kind of violence imaginable. We'll get to that in Tier 4. For now, just know that LiveLeak was their attempt to clean things up a little. The idea was to make it feel more like raw journalism or citizen reporting, like a place where the real, unfiltered world could be seen without media spin. But let's be real, most people remember LiveLeak for one thing: death on camera. While platforms like YouTube were tightening the rules and scrubbing away anything graphic, LiveLeak became one of the last stops for the stuff that got banned everywhere else. Executions, Warzone clips, street fights, car crashes, that type of stuff. If it was intense and disturbing, it would probably be on LiveLeak. One of the first videos that blew the site up was Saddam Hussein's execution. It was shaky, grainy phone footage of him on the gallows, hearing his sentence, and then dropping through the floor. Mainstream news wouldn't touch it, but on LiveLeak, it was front and center. Years later, when ISIS began uploading those infamous beheading videos, most of the internet panicked, and rightly so. YouTube and Facebook took them down almost instantly. LiveLeak, on the other hand, briefly allowed them. Eventually, they started trimming the actual executions, but still posted the aftermath. In one video, you could see the corpse of journalist James Foley laid out in the desert after he had been killed. Then, in 2021, it was suddenly gone with no tangible explanation. If you tried visiting the site, it quietly redirected you to a new platform called Item Fix that specifically banned extreme violence. Instead of the gore you came for, you would find clips of weird stunts, fails, and odd news stories. But the people who watched? Yeah, they remember. The SCP Foundation. SCP Wiki. The SCP Wiki website is, for all intents and purposes, the internet's creepiest filing cabinet. It's filled with thousands of stories about a fictional organization called the SCP Foundation. And their job is pretty straightforward. Find the weird stuff, lock it up, and never ever let the public find out it exists. SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect, which is both the group's motto and their main strategy. The Foundation tracks down things that defy science or reality, like haunted objects, immortal creatures, glitchy space-time pockets, and shoves them into secret bunkers where, hopefully, they don't kill anyone. Emphasis on hopefully. They operate totally off the grid, but be rest assured that if something supernatural or dangerous pops up, they will be waiting to send in heavily armed squads called mobile task forces who are like paranormal SWAT teams. Either the weird thing gets captured and stored, or the whole event gets wiped from the public's memory. It's like Men in Black, if Men in Black had a much higher body count. And speaking of body count, the Foundation isn't exactly ethical. They use disposable human test subjects called D-class personnel, who are usually death row inmates or people the world won't miss. These people get tossed into experiments with things like man-eating shadows or cursed elevators, and they rarely make it out alive. It's all done in the name of protecting humanity. But yeah, it's messed up. Some of the SCPs are straight out of nightmares, like SCP-087, which is a stairwell that goes down forever and might have a ghost face lurking in it. Or SCP-096, a pale humanoid that becomes unstoppable and homicidal the second anyone sees its face, even in a photo. But the fan favorite was SCP-173, a creepy statue that doesn't move unless you blink. Blink once and it snaps your neck. If that sounds like the weeping angels from Doctor Who, you're not alone. All the stories are written in this cold, clinical tone, like official government reports, complete with redacted info and warning labels. That's what makes it so spooky. It feels real. The deeper you go into the wiki, the more it starts to feel like you're not reading fiction anymore. Instead, you're reading leaked files from some sketchy organization that keeps the universe from unraveling, but at a pretty steep cost. So yeah, the SCP Foundation isn't just about monsters and anomalies. It's also a look at what happens when people think the ends justify the means and how terrifying that can be. Creepypasta.com. Creepypasta.com looks harmless at first. Just a bunch of user-submitted horror stories, right? But dig a little deeper and it becomes clear that this site didn't just help build modern internet horror, it helped shape it. Some stories were short and spooky. Others stretch into entire universes with haunted video games, cursed cartoons, and rituals that make you wonder if trying them, just for fun, was a really good idea. And then there was Slender Man. Tall, faceless, and weirdly stylish in a suit. He became one of the site's biggest legends. The problem was that somewhere along the line, some people forgot it was all made up. In 2014, two 12-year-old girls stabbed their friend, saying they did it for Slender Man. They wanted to impress him because they thought he was real. That incident turned the site into headline news. Moderators quickly put out statements reminding everyone that the stories were fictional. But by then, the damage was done. Fiction had leaked into the real world, and not in a fun ghost story around the campfire kind of way. The most disturbing part is how realistic the stories often felt. They'd throw in real towns, news reports, or just enough boring detail to make you second guess whether it really was just fiction. The line between what's made up and what might be possible started to blur. On purpose. It didn't help that some of the most popular themes were pretty dark. Lost TV episodes that end in suicide, cursed websites that drive people insane, or video games that kill the player in real life. It was like childhood nostalgia and existential dread got mashed into one creepy internet casserole. Sure, most people read the stories and moved on, but when a kid stabs her friend because she thinks a tall, faceless, imaginary man told her to do it, yeah, that's when things really start to get out of hand. Tier 2. The Pirate Bay. Back in 2003, a group of Swedes with way too much time and zero fear of lawsuits launched something called the Pirate Bay. And despite sounding like a Disneyland ride for daredevil teens, it was actually a digital treasure map that pointed you towards all kinds of illegal goodies. Instead of gold coins, you got pirated movies, cracked software, obscure albums, and enough corn to fry a hard drive. The site didn't actually host any of the files, it just handed you magnet links, which worked like digital breadcrumbs leading you to the stuff you wanted, or in many cases, really didn't want. With one click, you could download an entire season of Friends, or accidentally infect your computer with malware so bad, it starts sending spam emails in Russian. It was that kind of place. And the deeper you went, the darker it got. Hidden in folders labeled anime or HD videos were videos so graphic that they'd get banned from even the sketchiest mainstream corn sites. Revenge.com? Check. Deepfake celebrity stuff? Check. Home videos that clearly weren't meant to be public? Also available. The Pirate Bay knew it was sketchy, and honestly, kinda leaned into it. They'd slap lawsuit threats right on the homepage like trophies next to provocative imagery mocking Hollywood and the MPAA. The site was pretty much a digital middle finger to copyright law, run by people who were clearly having way too much fun. Naturally, the cops weren't amused. There were raids, server seizures, and even prison sentences. In 2009, the founders got jail time, but every time the Pirate Bay got shut down, it popped up somewhere else. You couldn't kill it. The wildest part is that anyone could upload torrents. So while some folk were just sharing bootleg DVDs, others were sneaking in straight-up snuff films disguised as cat videos or sharing hacked surveillance footage like it was a regular Tuesday. 4chan.org. At first glance, 4chan looks like a messy old forum from the early 2000s that somehow never died. It's anonymous, chaotic, and kind of ugly, which is exactly how its users like it. Originally launched by a 15-year-old anime fan from New York, the site started out as a place to share Japanese cartoons. That's it, just anime pictures, nothing too deep. But then came B, the random board that had no topic and no rules, just pure digital anarchy. B became the heart of 4chan's culture, if you can even call it that. Here, users posted whatever they wanted, without usernames, filters, or moderation. And when you let people be anonymous in a space where there are no consequences, things go downhill fast. Pretty soon, 4chan wasn't just about anime. It was the birthplace of memes like Rickrolling, lolcats, and even Anonymous, a group of hackers and netizens known for protesting against censorship and corruption. But behind the goofy memes and pranks were something darker. Users pushed boundaries not for fun, but to see what they could get away with. The shock factor became the whole point. So things like graphic adult films, gore, racism, and animal abuse, B had it all. The line between edgy humor and actual sociopathy wasn't just blurred, it was erased. The culture became proudly heartless, and doxing people was practically a sport. Victims were laughed at, and empathy was treated like weakness. And then came Paul, which was short for politically incorrect. If B was chaotic evil, Paul was calculated. This board turned into a magnet for white supremacists, conspiracy theorists, and extremists who hid their hate behind layers of irony and memes. They'd post Nazi propaganda, dehumanizing jokes, and violent fantasies, then hide behind irony. But the damage was real. Mass murderers were memed into celebrity status, and the line between trolling and radicalizing was pretty much destroyed. Sure, 4chan occasionally scrubs illegal content, but for the most part, the only rule is don't get caught. It's barely moderated by conventional standards. What started as a place for anime fans somehow devolved into a case study on what happens when the internet grows without a conscience. But if you think 4chan's bad, you should know that this iceberg will get much worse. There's a site coming that didn't just post people, they ruined lives for fun. But first, let's talk about 4chan's evil sibling, 8chan, or 8kun. 8chan started off as a messy little rebellion project, a place where anyone could create their own message board with basically no rules. It pitched itself as a free speech alternative to 4chan, but what that really meant was zero moderation and zero accountability. Predictably, the worst parts of the internet saw it as an open invitation. It didn't take long for to hit the fan. Boards dedicated to hate speech, violent extremism, and predatory content became some of its busiest hubs. People banned from everywhere else like Reddit, Twitter, and even 4chan dragged their filth over the 8chan. And while the site claimed it didn't allow illegal content, the enforcement was a joke. Some boards openly discussed minors inappropriately, and others shared links to child mistreatment material that was hosted elsewhere. In 2015, even Google blacklisted the entire site for suspected child exploitation. And then came the violence. During Gamergate, a campaign that began over gaming journalism but later turned into targeted harassment, 8chan became the new headquarters for coordinated attacks after 4chan tried to shut things down. But it didn't stop there. In 2019 alone, 3 separate mass shooters used 8chan to post manifestos before carrying out their attacks. Before killing 51 people in Christchurch, New Zealand, the shooter, Brenton Harris Tarrant, uploaded a manifesto to 8chan. The Poway synagogue shooter did the same, and hours before the El Paso massacre, a document filled with racist hate and justification for violence appeared on the site. Each time, users rallied behind the perpetrators, celebrating them and encouraging others to follow their example. After El Paso, the backlash finally hit. Infrastructure companies like Cloudflare dropped them, web hosts bailed, and the site was basically forced offline. But as always, it came back. In late 2019, it rebranded as 8kun and quietly slipped back online with help from Russian hosts known for handling cybercrime. It limped along from server to server, never fully stable, but just alive enough to keep its most loyal users going, especially the QAnon crowd, who had basically turned 8chan into their church. QAnon is a conspiracy cult that believes a secret group of satanic, cannibalistic elites controls the world, and that an anonymous figure known as Q is leaking cryptic clues to expose and defeat them. They believe a bunch of other questionable stuff, but that's the meat of the matter. At its core, 8chan, and now 8kun, become proof that free speech can be twisted into a cover for radicalization, kid exploitation, and glorified violence. WikiFeet. At first glance, WikiFeet looks almost wholesome. It's got a simple layout, nothing flashy, and it doesn't scream disturbing internet hole the way other sites on this list do. It's also pretty straightforward. You type in a celebrity's name, and boom, rows of clean, well-lit photos of their feet pop up. Red carpet strappy heels, barefoot beach walks, blurry screenshots from interviews where someone's shoes were off for half a second. That's it. Totally normal, right? Then you scroll a little further and you notice there's a rating system, a 5-star scale. Users upvoting and downvoting toes like it's Yelp for ankles. People leave detailed comments not about the outfits or achievements, but about arch structure, heel smoothness, and toe symmetry. There are actual arguments in the forums about which celebrity has the most overrated pinky toe. You'll see terms like foot tier list, instep envy, and bunion truthers. It stops being quirky fast. And then it gets worse because it's not just actresses and models. Female politicians, news anchors, and public figures probably didn't expect to have their feet logged, analyzed, and archived by strangers also show up on the site. But since the photos are technically public, obtained from paparazzi shots, red carpet stills, and social media posts, the site doesn't need permission. It just scrapes everything and builds what usually ends up being a surprisingly detailed catalog. And sometimes, that catalog actually helps solve real-world mysteries. In 2019, someone tried to leak a blurry bathtub foot photo claiming it was US Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but WikiFeet users weren't convinced. They broke out the zoom tools, compared toe length, bone angles, and foot veins to verified photos in the archive, and reached a verdict. It wasn't her. But they didn't just stop at debunking the claim, they correctly identified the foot as belonging to Sydney Leathers. Yes, really. That's when it stopped being a weird foot gallery and became something more unsettling. A forensic, crowdsourced, toe-obsessed task force. Behind it all is Eli Ozer, a former animator who now runs WikiFeet full-time. He says the site gets over 3 million views a month. There's also a sister site, WikiFeet X, for adult film stars. For a few years, copyright laws in the EU blocked access to high-res images, but that barely slowed it down. The archive just kept growing, fed by a silent army of foot connoisseurs who are, for some reason, determined to catalog the internet one soul at a time. And the creepiest part is, it's all still perfectly legal. And as disturbing as it sounds, feet are just the start. There's a site coming where people are into way weirder stuff, like cartoon wolves doing adult stuff. Before that, let's talk a little about a site people use to ruin others' lives. It's pretty sad. Kiwi Farms. On the surface, Kiwi Farms looks like just another internet forum complete with outdated layout, inside jokes, and a lot of weird usernames. But that's just the skin. Underneath, it's one of the darkest rabbit holes the web has to offer. What started as a niche space to mock one person turned into a forum where organized harassment is, well, the whole point. The site was founded by Joshua Connor Moon, a former 8chan mod, and it didn't take long for things to escalate. Kiwi Farms users pride themselves on hunting down what they call lol cows. And by that, they mean people they believe are so cringeworthy or mentally ill that they deserve endless public humiliation. These targets are often trans folks, neurodivergent people, people with mental health struggles, or just anyone a little too online for Kiwi Farms' taste. And this isn't just name-calling in a thread. It's a full-time hobby for some of them. Threads stretch on for hundreds of pages with screenshots, mock diagnoses, edited photos, and wild conspiracy-level speculation. But then it leaves the screen, and that's when things really start to get dangerous. Users dig up real names, addresses, and family members of their victims. They call in fake reports to the cops. They call that swatting. Or sending pizza deliveries using trans victims' dead names just to stir the pot. Some of them call employers and others send threats. The site is basically a tutorial in digital stalking. And the game never ends because victims can't just log off. One of the most disturbing examples was Clara Sorrenti, a transgender activist who was doxxed and swatted by Kiwi Farms users. After she fled her home and checked into a hotel, she made the mistake of posting a photo of her cat on the bed. That's all it took. From the bed sheets, users figured out where she was staying. Then they sent pizzas under her dead name to prove they were still watching. It sounds like a horror movie, but it's real, and it doesn't always end with pizza. Several of the forum's targets have taken their own lives after years of harassment. In 2016, Julie Terryberry died by suicide following a Kiwi Farms harassment campaign. In 2018, Chloe Segal set herself on fire in public. In 2021, Nier, a well-known developer in the retro gaming community, posted a final message blaming Kiwi Farms for turning years of bullying into something they couldn't survive. The site's users often justify this by calling it free speech or archiving, but that's like calling a hit list a diary. Tier 3, E621.net. When you first log in, E621 might look like just another image board, but give it 10 seconds, and you'll realize you've wandered into one of the internet's most infamous hubs for furry corn that's graphic, hyper-specific, and aggressively niche. Launched in 2007, E621 functions like a massive digital art gallery, where users upload illustrations and tag them with disturbing accuracy. Tags range from the species of the character to the exact act being shown. And while there is technically some safe-for-work content, that's not why anyone's here. The bulk of its nearly 4 million posts is explicit. Like, very explicit. And dives headfirst into every fetish imaginable, often involving anthropomorphic animals, monsters, and characters from shows originally meant for kids. You'll find graphic art of Pokemon, Sonic, or My Little Pony characters in X-rated situations and positions that'll ruin all your favorite childhood memories in seconds. Within the furry fandom, this kind of content is called YIF. But what makes E621 controversial isn't just the cartoon critters, it's how far the content goes. Some images involve violent or non-consensual themes. Others explore body horror, transformation fetishes, or things that look an awful lot like bestiality but get a pass because the characters are fictional. The site's tagging system is both disturbingly detailed and incredibly efficient, because it lets users filter for just about anything, from bodily fluids to acts that probably shouldn't be searchable. While E621 claims to prohibit illegal content, the abstract nature of most of its art makes enforcement fuzzy at best. Combine that with a sheer volume of submissions, and moderation becomes more like a suggestion than a system. The site is owned by Jan Varka Mulders, who also runs Bad Dragon, a company that makes fantasy-themed adult toys modeled after animals and mythical creatures, many of which are inspired directly by art from E621. So yeah, there's a feedback loop between what gets drawn online and what ends up being sold in silicone. Fantasy meets fetish, and both sides profit. More recently, E621 has run into real-world trouble. In early 2024, it blocked access in North Carolina after the state passed an age verification law for adult sites. Arizona followed in May 2025 with a similar bill, threatening the site's home base. It's now facing a choice: comply, shut down, or vanish. But even if the domain disappears, E621 isn't going anywhere. Its content has already been downloaded, mirrored, and etched into the stranger corners of the internet. Drawings are one thing, but it doesn't stop there. In the next tier, we have a site where people took things way further with their own bodies. Encyclopedia Dramatica. Encyclopedia Dramatica was like if Wikipedia snorted bath salts and decided empathy was for losers. It launched in 2004 as a place to document live journal drama. Yes, live journal. But it quickly evolved into a no-holds-barred cesspool of internet cruelty, where nothing was off limits and everything was fair game, especially if it made someone miserable. Styled like a wiki but written like a middle school burn book possessed by a demon, the site specialized in mockery, doxing, and absolute chaos. It didn't matter if you were a public figure or just some random person who got caught saying something cringe on the internet. If you made waves, even small ones, you could wake up to an article trashing your name, plastered with your photos, your address, and probably something photoshopped involving a goat. The site thrived on cruelty for entertainment. Mocking disabled people? It was hilarious to them. Glorifying school shooters? That was their jam. And uploading real footage of people self-killing? That was considered top-tier content. The more disturbing it was, the more it was celebrated. Articles were crammed with offensive slurs, shock horn, gore, and enough hate speech to make even 4chan blink. And if the words didn't sting enough, contributors coordinated attacks offline too, by sending hookers, threats, or unwanted pizza to people's homes. At its peak, ED became a hub for trolls and wannabe edgelords, especially those coming from B, 4chan's infamous Anything Goes board. They'd plan raids together, targeting websites, online communities, or individuals just to stir chaos. The only requirement for being a target was existing. Even the site's founder, Shara DeGrippo, eventually tapped out. She shut it down, saying it had spiraled into something she couldn't or didn't want to control anymore. She also mentioned pressure from law enforcement, which probably kicked things into gear. But like most things on the internet, ED refused to die. Mirrors popped up, and clones kept it alive. In the end, Encyclopedia Dramatica was never really about documenting drama. It was about being the drama. BestGore.com. BestGore.com was not for the faint-hearted, so some of the site's contents came with disclaimers, but they didn't offer much context. From the second you landed on the homepage, the site basically screamed, if you're squeamish, turn around. If for any reason you chose not to pay attention to the disclaimers and decided to stick around, you would immediately come face to face with brutal content that looked like it had been ripped straight out of a horror movie. Only worse, because most of it was real. Launched in 2008, Best Gore had one job: to show you the worst humanity had to offer. Car crashes, cartel executions, suicides, war zone footage, surgical procedures with zero anesthesia, you name it. If it was graphic and gory, it was on there. And usually with some edgy title and commentary that sounded less like a news report and more like someone daring you to keep scrolling. The guy behind it, Mark Merrick, claimed he had a noble goal. He said the gore was supposed to teach people lessons. Things like don't speed, don't mess with drugs, don't romanticize war, and definitely don't take life for granted. In his mind, this was tough love activism. But let's be honest, people didn't visit Best Gore to learn life lessons. They came for the horror. And then, in 2012, the site crossed a line even other shock sites didn't dare to touch. That year, Best Gore posted a video called One Lunatic, One Ice Pick. And it was exactly what it sounded like. A real murder caught on camera. Luca Magnotta tortured and killed a man named Jun Lin, cut up his body, and filmed the whole thing. Then someone uploaded it to Best Gore, and for a while it stayed up. Merrick didn't immediately remove it. He said it was educational. As you'd expect, the internet and law enforcement didn't agree. The video went viral in the worst way possible. Police opened an investigation, and Merrick was eventually arrested in Canada for corrupting morals, under an obscenity law that almost never gets used. He said the video was taken down before the cops even asked, but it didn't matter. That one post dragged Best Gore from the shadows and put it on international headlines. But here's the thing, that wasn't a one-time mistake. Best Gore had always walked a thin line between showing reality and just feeding a morbid audience. Some users really believed it opened their eyes. Others were there for the adrenaline rush that comes with watching something you know you shouldn't. Merrick insisted he was doing the world a favor. He said the site exposed media manipulation and government lies in addition to teaching life lessons. To support this claim, he'd post raw war footage that challenged propaganda or debunked fake viral videos. And maybe he had a point sometimes. But that didn't change the fact that most of the site's appeal came from how much it hurt to look at just about anything on there. Eventually, in 2020, Best Gore vanished. Again, there was no dramatic exit or apology. It was just gone. This place was chaotic, yeah, but there's a site coming that no one can explain. We're not even sure if it was real. Goregrish.com. Goregrish.com isn't the kind of site you accidentally stumble on. If you're there, you're meant to be there, or at least you made a conscious decision to go looking for it. It started back in 2008 under the name pornographic.net. Yeah, real classy, I know. But rebranded a couple years later into something more blunt, Goregrish. By 2010, it had found its place as the next stop on the shock content timeline. It basically picked up where older forums like Ogrish and Uncover Reality left off. But while those sites either cleaned up or disappeared altogether, Goregrish didn't budge. It doubled down. The site is basically a giant archive of, you guessed it, human suffering. It was carefully categorized like a library, but for death, mutilation, and every horrible thing you can think of. The homepage is filled with forums and threads where users casually browse and comment on videos of self-unaliving, car wrecks, torture, beheadings, war crimes, and yes, sometimes even necrophilia. You heard that right. Needless to say, you'll find some of the most infamous shock clips in internet history on there. Luke McDonough's murder video? Check. Cartel hits? Prison stabbings? Soldiers being executed on camera? Yep, it's all in rotation, with comment section to match. One of the lowest points came when the site posted autopsy photos of a 3-year-old named Ngatikaura Ngati. The images caused immediate outrage, especially from child protection groupers who couldn't believe someone thought it was okay to upload that kind of thing. But on Gorgrish, everything is content. What really makes the site stand out or stand apart is the tone. It's not just the videos, it's the way people talk about them. The community runs like any other message board. There are regulars, inside jokes, and post counts. Only instead of chatting about football or movies, they're rating decapitations and swapping self-killing methods. It's surreal. Like most of the other sites that hosted extremely graphic content, the creators of Gorgrish.com have spent years defending it, claiming they just want to show people the reality the world ignores. And maybe that's true, but it still doesn't explain the weirdly casual fascination. Sure, there were disclaimers, but there was no real attempt to educate or inform people. It was just raw, relentless, and honestly, that seems to be the entire point. Over the years, Gorgrish has taken hits from hackers, takedown complaints, and has even gotten delisted from Google in places like Germany. In 2023, it went offline for weeks, supposedly from another round of attacks. But like the horror movie villain it kind of is, the site always comes back. And maybe the most disturbing thing isn't what's on Gorgrish. It's how many people keep showing up to watch. Mortis.com. Mortis.com loads to a plain black screen with just one word in white text. Mortis. Click anywhere and a single login box appears with no images and no links. The site has been live since 1997. It didn't crash, didn't change much, and was active for years before going offline. People have poked at it for years, including hackers, cryptographers, and conspiracy theorists. They've all tried to get past the login screen, and none of them have succeeded. Naturally, the silence has birthed some pretty wild theories. Because if there's one thing people love to do, it's come up with imaginary explanations for things they don't understand. Some believe it's a CIA or NSA dead drop, a place for agents to access highly classified content through a remote and untraceable portal. Others think it's part of an elite hacker network, or worse, a gateway to some older occult knowledge or esoteric systems buried in modern code. And then there are those who see it as a ghost, not in the supernatural sense, but as a forgotten relic from an internet that's long since moved on. What really haunts people, though, is the feeling that someone was maintaining it for quite some time. The site went down sometimes, but it always came back. Its SSL certificates got renewed, and on top of that, some people claimed that there were subtle tweaks in the background that you'd miss if you weren't watching closely. Why would someone keep something like this running for so long without ever saying a word? To this day, there's no definitive proof about what Mortis.com actually was. You can read theories and dig through forums for as long as you'd like, but you'll find nothing certain. Incel.is. At first glance, Incel.is looks like a support forum. If you don't look closely enough, you might even mistake it for just another online space where lonely people gather to talk about rejection, frustration, and isolation. The word incel, after all, originally stood for involuntarily celibate, and the early communities for them were more sad than scary. People then were looking for advice, empathy, or even just someone to listen. But Incel.is isn't that. It's not even close. Founded in 2017 by members of the Reddit Incels community after the original Reddit Incel subreddit got banned for inciting violence, this site quickly turned into one of the darkest corners of the internet. So what's it about? Healing? Definitely not. Growth? You wish. The whole website runs on resentment and blame, and its purpose is to convince thousands of men that the world is broken because women have the audacity to say no. The forum openly bans women and LGBTQ users, and calls itself a safe space for straight men, which in this case just means a place where no one interrupts the hate speech. The central belief here is that the modern world is a rigged marketplace, where women only want chads, aka the genetically blessed, socially dominant men, and everyone else is doomed. Not unlucky, not struggling, doomed. And the posts reflect that. Some talk about self-unaliving with disturbing regularity. Others share graphic details of their violent fantasies, express their misogyny, and engage in idol worship of real-life mass murderers like Elliot Rodger and Alec Minassian. What's even more disturbing is how performative the hatred becomes. It's not enough to be miserable. You have to be the most miserable, the most hopeless, and of course, the most violently bitter. Threads sometimes turn into competitions to see who can describe their hatred of women or fantasies of revenge in the most disturbing way. And it doesn't stop at words. Some users share real experiences and stories of stalking women, watching them from their windows, and even dreams about forcing them into submission. Others flood the forum with memes that make jokes out of violation, child mistreatment, and domestic violence. And of course, no one stops it. In fact, the moderators seem to encourage this spiral. Over the years, the site has been booted from several domains for hate speech, only to pop up again somewhere else. In 2022, investigative reporters linked incel.is to a network of self-killing forums, where users were actively being coached through self-harm. That overlap isn't exactly a coincidence, because on this site, death isn't feared. It's marketed, especially if it involves someone else dying too. Incel.is doesn't just let people vent. It radicalizes them. It's a pressure cooker, and the longer someone stays, the more likely they are to explode. If you think the anger here was bad, wait till we hit the site in the next tier, where hate was the whole point. Tier 4. Ogrish.com. Ogrish.com said it was an uncensored news platform, but let's be honest. It was more like digital carnage on demand. The site was all about raw violence. Executions, accidents, war zone footage, pretty much all the stomach-churning stuff known to mankind. Nothing was blurred. Nothing was softened, and the tone was completely numb. Like the site wasn't even pretending to care. Back in the early 2000s, this kind of thing stood out. While most websites still had some limits, Ogrish leaned all the way into shock. Its slogan literally asked, "Can you handle life?" and then hit you with videos most people probably couldn't handle at all. It didn't shy away from the dark stuff, and that's putting it lightly. When footage of people jumping from the Twin Towers on 9/11 started circulating, most sites avoided it. Ogrish didn't. It uploaded the videos and photos with zero warning, no permissions, and definitely no filter. Same thing happened in 2004 when Kim Sun-il, a South Korean man, was executed by militants. The video went up almost immediately, and so did the outrage. South Korean hackers tried to take the whole site down. Governments in Europe started pushing back. In Germany, authorities demanded that Ogrish verify its users' ages or face a ban. The site refused. And because a lot of Europe's internet traffic ran through Frankfurt at the time, when one provider blacklisted Ogrish, the block affected access across parts of Europe. Still, Ogrish came back at one point in 2006. They tried to rebrand. They swapped out the dark, edgy layout for something cleaner, added podcasts and forums, and introduced a section called Underground Media, which was what you could call a digital enter if you dare sign. It looked a little more polished, but nothing underneath really changed. The videos were still brutal. The commentary was still jaded, and people still came for the same reason, the shock. They even made an effort to clean up the forums a bit by cutting down on hate speech and banning trolls, but it didn't last. The site always snapped back to what it really was, a place for content so extreme no mainstream platform would touch it. Eventually, in late 2006, Ogrish shut down and started redirecting users to a new platform called LiveLeak. But by then, the damage was already done. BME. Before TikTok made extreme body modifications something you could casually scroll past on your feed, there was BME Zine, which was pretty much the OG headquarters for people who were really into that type of stuff. Launched in 1994 by Shannon Larrett, it was the first site fully dedicated to body modification. And not the kind you show to your grandma. We're talking deep cuts, literally. BME didn't stop at tattoos and nose rings. This place dove headfirst into the deep end with things like subdermal implants, scarification, suspension, genital beading, voluntary amputations, and, yep, even people castrating themselves. Voluntarily, on camera, while smiling, or at least trying to. It was like a DIY horror show curated by people with terrifying pain tolerance and zero concern for conventional anatomy. The images and videos were unfiltered, uncensored, and unapologetically graphic. All you had to do was click one link and boom, someone's peeling off their own skin or hanging from hooks in a blood-slicked bathroom. The worst part wasn't even the gore. It was realizing that it was all real. Not props, not makeup. Just regular folks doing irreversible things to themselves. Eventually, BME evolved into a full-on subculture. It added a video archive, then launched its own blog meets social network called I Am BME Zine, where users casually documented healing scars, botched attempts, and in some cases, even self-castrations. There were even meetups, and by that I mean actual real-world gatherings like BME Fest, where people grilled burgers, dangled from meat hooks, and popped fireworks. Some people came to get their tongue split for the first time, and others brought their kids. While they thought it was a lot of fun, the rest of the world wasn't on board. Germany restricted access to the site, calling it dangerous for youth. Google blacklisted it. Office firewalls flagged it for torture and nudity, and governments asked Shannon to censor the content, but he just shrugged and moved the servers offshore. Shannon Lauret died in 2013, but his legacy lives on as part digital archive and part urban legend, scattered across corners of the internet that still haven't been scrubbed. That made your skin crawl? This is a warning that there's a site coming that was so disturbing, it came with actual health warnings for people with epilepsy. Before we get there, let's talk about the site that fooled people into thinking kittens could be grown in jars. Bonsai Kitten. The Bonsai Kitten website was like something out of a twisted science experiment. It claimed to teach people how to grow a kitten inside a glass jar. The idea, according to the site, was that by placing a young kitten in a jar and sealing it, its bones would slowly mold to the shape of the container as it grew. Just like a bonsai tree is shaped by years of pruning and wire. The page used clinical-sounding instructions and fake scientific jargon, paired with images of kittens appearing to be trapped in glass containers, which gave the impression that this horrifying practice was not only real, but also effective. As you can imagine, the site wasn't a real guy. It was made by an MIT student as a kind of dark satire, meant to highlight how humans treat nature as something to manipulate for aesthetics or amusement. But the problem was that nobody was laughing. They didn't even know it was a joke to begin with. People who stumbled across it didn't always understand the satire, and were disturbed by the idea that anyone would torture animals this way. The photos, while staged, were convincing enough that the outrage spread quickly. Animal rights organizations like the Humane Society and the Animal Welfare Institute received thousands of complaints. Some people demanded the creator to be arrested, while others started online petitions, believing this was a real form of abuse happening in someone's basement. The FBI investigated the website under a federal law signed in 1999 that criminalized the distribution of depictions of animal cruelty for commercial gain. Though the authorities eventually confirmed it was a hoax and that no kittens were harmed, the backlash didn't go away. The website was pulled from its original MIT server, only to reappear on other domains like Rotten.com. Even after official statements confirmed that the entire thing was fake, mirror versions of the site kept showing up, and so did the complaints, often from people in other countries where the story continued to circulate without context. Ted the Caver. When you first get in, Ted the Caver looks like nothing special. Just an old Angel Fire site with a black background and old HTML, and a few grainy photos. But once you start reading, it pulls you in. Written like a personal blog, the story follows a guy named Ted and his friend, B, as they explore a mysterious passage inside a cave system. It starts out normal enough. Dust, rocks, claustrophobic tunnels, just two guys slowly chiseling their way through a tight opening they've nicknamed Floyd's Tomb. But as they dig deeper, the tone shifts. The air pressure changes for no reason. They hear wind blowing through completely sealed tunnels. Strange symbols appear carved into the walls, and just like that, the cave stops being a cave. Ted documents everything, like a diary, using a plain, logical, and matter-of-fact writing style. And somehow, that just makes the descent into the weird even more disturbing. He talks about hearing voices, experiencing sleep paralysis, and having violent nightmares. He starts sensing something watching him, not just inside the cave, but back at home. But no matter how bad it gets, he keeps going back. With each update, the sense of dread builds. And because the blog was uploaded over time, it felt like it was unfolding in real life. By the final post, Ted mentions he's bringing a gun. He says they're going back in one last time because they have to know what's waiting. And then, nothing. There's no goodbye post and no report about what happened next. The blog just stops. For years, people thought it was real. The photos were too specific, too dirty, and cramped to be faked easily. Some caving enthusiasts even pinpointed which cave they thought it was based on Ted's descriptions and tried to find it themselves. Turns out it was fiction all along. It was written by a guy named Ted Hegeman, based on real caving trips, but with a lot of creative freedom. By the time it was confirmed, it didn't matter. The internet had already decided that Ted the Caver was a legend. This was fake, thankfully. But what people saw when they visited goatsea.cx, yeah, that was real all right. We'll get to that soon. In the meantime, let's talk about a British magazine website that doesn't seem like much until you go down the rabbit hole. 40 Times. 40 Times isn't a gore site. It's not even trying to scare you. Or at least not in the way you'd expect. It's a British magazine that reports the world's strangest phenomena. Like it's reading out the weather. You open it expecting quirky stories about Bigfoot or maybe a haunted toaster. And at first, that's exactly what you get. UFO sightings, ghost encounters, the occasional Victorian sea monster. But then it doesn't stop. Soon, you're reading about spontaneous human combustion. By that, I mean actual documented cases of people bursting into flames with no heat source and no warning. Just ashes where a person used to be. By now, your curiosity's awake, and the Fortean Times keeps feeding it with things like reports of animals raining down from the sky and invisible forces knocking people off their feet. No one's claiming it's aliens or demons or interdimensional glitches. They're just saying, here's what happened. Make of it what you will. And that's the creepy genius of it. Fortean Times doesn't try to explain anything. It collects weirdness like it's building a library. It cross-references sightings, revisits cases from decades ago, and makes the truly bizarre feel like just another news item. And that's when it starts to sink in. If even one of these stories is real, then what else might be? You start with a chuckle at a blurry photo of a lake monster, and before you know it, you're reading about entire flocks of birds dropping dead mid-flight, or people who vanish in front of witnesses. Tier 5. Goatsy.cx. If you were online in the early 2000s, chances are you got hit with something that scarred your eyeballs, and Goatsy.cx was the king of that ambush. The site greeted you with a minimal homepage, and before you knew what was happening, you would come face to face, or in this case, face to screen, with a very disturbing image of a naked man, crouched forward, using both hands to hold open the one place the sun don't shine. That image, infamously titled hello.jpg, was a raw display of something no one ever asked to see. And yet, it became one of the internet's most legendary traps. The photo itself surfaced in the late 90s and was passed around on corn-heavy Usenet forums. But it wasn't until a group of prank-loving hackers called the Hick Crew got involved that Goatsy became a phenomenon. They thought it'd be hilarious to drop the image into Christian chat rooms. Later, one of them registered the domain Goatsy.cx to streamline the chaos, and the rest, they say, is gross internet history. Goatsy was weaponized for shock value. People would mask the link with innocent bait like free iPods or puppy pics, then sit back and enjoy the scream. Soon, the image leaked into places that it had no business being. It got spammed into forums, shared on Oprah's message boards, snuck into BBC broadcasts, and even got used as revenge for hot-linking someone's images without credit. Entire sites were defaced with it. When Slashdot had to change its entire comment system just to stop people from sneaking in on Goatsy links, you knew this thing had become internet folklore. The original domain was taken down in 2004 for violating domain policies, but that didn't stop anything. Mirrors popped up everywhere. Try as they might, the people of the internet just couldn't rid themselves of that very haunting image. Meatspin. When you visit this site, the first thing you notice is the loud, upbeat music that some people say is annoyingly catchy. It plays on a loop like you just walked into a bad 80s dance party. Then your eyes slowly catch up to what's on screen. A low-res, looping clip of two people right in the middle of a very personal activity, while the receiving partner's family jewels spin in perfect circles right in time with the beat. And that's why it was called Meatspin. Launched in 2005, Meatspin wasn't just a video. It was a trap. A digital prank from the Wild West days of the internet, back when shock sites were practically a rite of passage, and drama was measured in seconds watched. In the corner of the screen was a spin counter that somehow dared you to keep going. 10 spins? Amateur. 50? You're getting somewhere. 100? You're never sleeping again. The footage was long believed to come from gay corn, but it was later traced back to a transgender adult film. Not that the internet cared. The point wasn't what it was what it did. Meatspin links were used exactly the same way people use Goatsy.cx links. They were weaponized for maximum embarrassment. People disguised it as job applications, funny memes, or news articles. Others snuck it onto public computers, college lecture screens, or worse, changed it to autoplay as someone's browser homepage. You didn't visit Meatspin willingly. You got meatspun. It didn't take long for the site's chaos to bleed into the real world. In 2013, a student at Florida State hacked campus Wi-Fi, so everyone got redirected to the spinning horror. 2 years later, the video played in a family restaurant. Yes, in front of children. And in 2016, someone hijacked a digital billboard in Sweden. Meatspin lit up the sky while drivers gawked and pedestrians questioned all their life choices. Long story short, never click a mystery link, because you might end up seeing some spinning. StaggeringBeauty.com. Staggering Beauty starts off harmless. When you first land on the site, it's just a white screen with a strange worm-like figure standing in the middle. It has big, white cartoon eyes and a soft, rounded body that sways with every move of your mouse. It feels silly, maybe even cute, like something pulled from an old school game. You move your mouse a little and it dances. You move it faster and it starts flailing around like it's trying to keep up. But then something changes. Text appears that says, "Shake vigorously." And once you do, everything spirals out of control. The screen explodes into a mess of strobing lights, loud chaotic music, and colors that blast your eyes in every direction. There's no transition or build-up. It all just happens in a flash. 1 second you're laughing at the dancing worm, the next you're trapped in what feels like a psychedelic nightmare. The music is distorted and aggressive. The shapes come fast and the colors are blinding. There's no way to stop it except by closing the tab or clicking away as fast as you can. Even then, your vision might still feel warped for a few seconds. If you're light sensitive or prone to seizures, the experience can be physically dangerous. The site even gives a warning at the bottom for people who are prone to epilepsy. But it's small and easy to ignore. And the moment you follow the simple instruction to shake the mouse, it punishes your curiosity with sensory overload. For this one, there's no deeper message or hidden meaning. It was created in 2012 by a developer named George Michael Brower, who just wanted to play with JavaScript and animation tools like Paper.js and Trayer.js. Stormfront. Stormfront is what happens when old school racism gets a makeover and finds Wi-Fi. Launched in 1996 by Don Black, a former Ku Klux Klan leader who apparently decided burning crosses just wasn't doing it for him anymore. It was the internet's first major organized hate forum, and it didn't just survive the early web chaos, it thrived. The site was sleek by 90s standards, structured like a real forum, and almost professional in its mission, which was to unite white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and Holocaust deniers under one digital roof. And it didn't hide what it was. The messaging was loud and clear. Whiteness must be protected. Diversity is a threat. And racism is just racial realism. It branded itself as a place for pride and heritage. But really, it was a recruiting ground. A place to turn passive bigots into full-on extremists through threads about race science, homeschooling your white children, and where to find a nice racist date. Stormfront had rules. No illegal stuff. No slurs in headlines. That type of stuff. But it was all BS. The real purpose was subtler and more dangerous. To radicalize slowly. Users weren't screamed at. They were groomed with pseudo-intellectual debates and fake historical facts until hate felt like common sense. And the damage wasn't limited to online nonsense. A disturbing number of its members went on to commit real-world acts of terror. Anders Breivik, who murdered 77 people in Norway, Stormfront user. Richard Poplowski, who shot 3 cops in Pittsburgh, also a user. The site wasn't just hosting racists, it was cultivating killers. In 2017, Stormfront got knocked offline for a bit. Not because they had changed their minds, but because web services finally felt enough public pressure to pull the plug. But of course, it didn't last. The site resurfaced, began jumping between servers, and tweaking its language just enough to avoid another takedown. Thisman.org. The face on thisman.org is a grainy and plain sketch, like something pulled from an old police report. It's a man with a wide forehead, thick eyebrows, and small eyes that just seem a little too close together. He's not monstrous or grotesque, just uncanny. But once you've seen him, it's hard to forget the way his expression seems frozen somewhere between a smirk and a grimace. And that's when the site tells you that this man has appeared in the dreams of thousands of people all over the world, none of whom know who he is. The website claims it started in 2006, when a patient described a man she kept seeing in her dreams. Her psychiatrist sketched the face, and another patient recognized him. From there, more and more people reported dreaming about the same man, often under strange or threatening circumstances. Some say he gives advice. Others say he just stands there, watching. A few say he hurts them. The creators say over 2,000 people have submitted sightings of this face in their sleep, across different countries, cultures, and languages. But the truth behind the site is even stranger. It's not entirely real. The man, the dream reports, even the worldwide phenomenon, was created as part of a viral marketing experiment by Italian sociologist Andrea Natella. He's the founder of Guerrilla Marketing, a group known for mixing art with psychological pranks. And according to multiple investigations, the whole site is a manufactured myth. There's no database of real dreamers, no psychiatrist, and no original sketch from a real patient. But somehow, knowing it's fake only makes it more disturbing. Because despite being fiction, people started dreaming about him anyway. After the site spread, users on sites like Reddit and 4chan started claiming they'd seen him too. Some drew their own versions, and others insisted they'd seen him before the site even existed. This is the disturbing Discord iceberg. Tier 1, the lewdest house. Imagine you're a moderator in a server dedicated to NSFW content, an adults-only space where people write out explicit scenarios and share artwork that would get you fired if your boss accidentally saw your screen. One day, someone requests to join. You're watching the staff channel when the owner pulls up her profile. She's 17. You expect her request to be declined, but instead, she gets approved. And just like that, a minor is in an adult server. And nobody seems to think this is a problem except you. This is the lewdest house, a private Discord server that ran through the summer and fall of 2019. The server had 15 Splatoon content creators, including Lizzie Ratsicle, a community superstar with over 77,000 YouTube subscribers, and Ghost of Time 1, the guy who ran the server. For context, Splatoon is Nintendo's colorful team-based shooter game. Ghost of Time 1 and others made animations using the game's characters. The server was their NSFW hangout. Think explicit roleplay, graphic fan art, and custom 3D models for animation. Technically legal stuff if you actually verify ages and keep it adults only. Keyword if. But they didn't. Kids got in. And it wasn't like they snuck in or anything. Some didn't even lie about their age. Server members invited them in directly and even set up roleplay channels specifically for them. In these chats, adults engaged minors in inappropriate roleplays where they typed out scenarios, wrote explicit dialogue, and requested that the minors describe lewd acts. Adults in the server also made fan art and graphic drawings based on the children and shared it around. This went on for months. You'd think someone would, be a responsible adult and shut the whole thing down, but no one did. Until September 2019. A group monitoring community misconduct called the 7 Deadly Boomers decided to act. They planted a spy inside the server who went in with the username Rosie the Octoling. For 4 weeks, Rosie just sat there screenshotting everything. User lists, roleplay exchanges, chat logs, you name it. They even caught Lizzie Ratsicle in Ghost of Time 1 approving minors. And Joffgrays634, another moderator, inviting a 16-year-old named Genesis twice. Everything was documented, and then on October 27, 2019, at 2 a.m., the Dropbox went public with the title Lewd House Heist SFW. The server died within hours. Lizzie Ratsicle later apologized officially on behalf of herself and Ghost of Time 1, but the deed was already done. After the whole thing, their Twitter accounts vanished. Their Discord profiles went private, and the Splatoon community had a new favorite cautionary tale. They called it one of the biggest scandals in community history, and honestly, they weren't wrong. The Beluga server incident. January 25th. 2023. A Discord admin pings at everyone in the staff channel and the message reads, "It is now against the rules to be gay. If you are gay, you have to decide if you are the top or the bottom. If you're the bottom, you are now a girl in a straight relationship. This will be added to the guidelines." The message was sent in Belugang, the official Discord server for YouTuber Beluga, who built his channel around comedic Discord skit videos and has about 10 million subscribers. The server has over 650,000 members and 30 staff members run it. The admin who posted that message was someone called Benji, and he's not just any moderator. He controls the ban appeals system, runs the server guidelines, and manages the spreadsheet tracking every moderator action. Fire him and the system would fall apart. After the post went up, other admins saw it and some decided to join in. Multiple administrators in a staff-only channel were now participating in what can only be described as outright homophobia for no apparent reason. Community members noticed and word spread. People took screenshots of the message and reached out to Blackwater Cat, the community manager. They argued the obvious. If a regular member had posted this, they would have been instantly banned. Staff should be held to the same standard, if not higher. But nothing happened. The message stayed up, and days passed. Then Discord's trust and safety team got involved. They sent an official warning saying Beluga's account had violated terms of service and community guidelines by posting dehumanizing or discriminatory content and was at risk of being taken down. The server went in full damage control mode. Staff channels got privatized. Staff Random turned into Staff Random 2, and Mod Chat became Mod Chat 2. The same conversations kept happening in those new channels, but now the locks were tighter and it was easier to bury the evidence. The staff who first reported Benji's message didn't get thanked for it. Instead, they had their roles stripped, and some were quietly pushed out of the events team altogether. Meanwhile, Rick, one of the head community managers, started getting pressed by worried members asking what was actually going to happen to Benji. Was he being demoted? Banned? Was anything going to happen at all? Rick admitted in leaked conversations that Benji's message had been wrong. Sure, he couldn't be removed because he ran most of the server's backend. He was too useful to lose, no matter what he said. So Benji and the staff who spoke up quietly disappeared, while Beluga just kept uploading. The Discord Cub server controversy. Imagine reporting a server hosting explicit content involving minors to Discord's trust and safety team, and the moderator who responds turns out to be part of the very community you're reporting. Instead of stepping aside or passing it on, they send back an official email saying the content is completely fine. In January 2019, a screenshot started making the rounds online. It showed an email conversation with a Discord trust and safety admin with the username TinyFeeks. Someone had reported the server's hosting cub content and was asking if it violated Discord's terms of service. For context, cub refers to adult-themed portrayals of animal characters with human traits that look underage. Discord's community guidelines explicitly ban content related to minors that are inappropriate, with no exceptions listed. The policy doesn't say only realistic minors or only human minors. It says minors, period. So why was an official admin saying it was allowed? People started digging and they made some damning discoveries. Turns out several members of Discord's trust and safety team were openly part of the furry community. Their bios listed furry servers, furry Twitter accounts, and showed activity in several online furry communities. Normally, that would be fine. People have hobbies, but their job was policing those same communities, and they were making exceptions to protect the content. When this information started circulating, it played a major part in triggering the #ChangeDiscord movement that exploded in February 2019. Thousands of users shared their experiences with inconsistent enforcement, selective bans, and reports being ignored for certain servers, while others got nuked for less. In response to all of the commotion, Discord released a statement. It was the standard corporate crisis response everyone has memorized by now. They said they take concerns seriously, that their policies are enforced consistently, and that they were reviewing internal processes. There was no acknowledgement that TinyFeeks' email was real, no explanation for why enforcement looked wildly inconsistent, and no consequences for the staff members involved. Just vague promises to do better, which usually means everyone should stop asking questions. #ChangeDiscord trended for a few more weeks. A handful of users left the platform. Most stayed right where they were, and eventually the controversy faded the way these things usually do, slowly and without any real resolution. Clapdaddy. What do you call it when a 20-year-old with 1.6 million followers seeks out trans teenage boys and asks them to book hotel rooms? If your answer is anything other than child mistreatment, you're wrong. In August 2019, a TikToker named Colton, username Clapdaddy, posted a 15-second video. He was wearing a suit, lip-syncing to audio, with scar makeup painted across his face. The caption introduced a character named JJ, a mob boss who runs a top casino and moves money for the mafia. It was dramatic, a little cheesy, and it worked. The video picked up traction fast. Other TikTok users jumped in. They made their own characters. Bodyguards, assassins, ex-nuns turned killers. Pretty much anything was on the table. They called them Mafia Original Characters, or OCs for short. Think collaborative roleplay, just squeezed into TikTok clips. People wrote backstories, filmed short scenes, and duetted each other's videos to keep shared storylines going. By December 2019, it was a full-blown community, with hundreds of creators and millions of views. Everyone knew everyone. Clapdaddy sat right at the center of it. By then, he had around 1.6 million followers. He duetted smaller creators, commented on their videos, and boosted people he liked, especially trans guys. He called them handsome, told them they were doing great, and offered to help grow their accounts. At first, it came across as him just being supportive, which is a good thing. Then March 2020 hit, and everything started to unravel. A cosplayer named Ava Lee, a prominent Mafia OC creator who had worked directly with Clapdaddy, posted a video. She said he had a clear history of fetishizing trans men and saying inappropriate things to them. She did not include screenshots in that first post, just the accusation. But she was a known figure in the community and not some random account, so it's safe to say that people were paying attention. After that first video, more people came forward. One of them was a trans minor named Lucas, with a username Vegetarian Water. He shared his experience publicly. Lucas said Clapdaddy talked about visiting him in Michigan and asked the then 16-year-old to book a hotel room for them to stay in together. Lucas said he felt uncomfortable, but he did not know how to say no. He posted screenshots from Discord showing Clapdaddy's messages. Others told nearly identical stories. They showed the same pattern over and over. Compliments and promises of collaboration, then requests for photos. Whenever Clapdaddy sends photos back, they were images taken from below the waist. On March 31st, 2020, Clap Daddy responded with a 7-part video series. His defense was simple. He said he talked to minors because he was on TikTok and in the cosplay community, and that he talked to everyone regardless of age. The compliments, he claimed, were meant to boost confidence in the trans community. He said he liked trans men and called it a preference, not fetishization. He described the conversations as supportive, not flirtatious. He also argued that any problems should have been handled privately instead of being brought to social media. What he did not do was address the hotel room request. He also did not explain the below-the-waist photos. Instead, he talked about being raised with good morals and values, and insisted the accusations were wrong. After that, Clap Daddy disappeared. His TikTok was deleted, and his Instagram went dark. There was no follow-up statement, and in the end, no accountability. Tier 2. Locked in a shed. Imagine walking into a shed. There's a bed, a television, and some cabinets. It looks ordinary at first, but then you realize there's a 13-year-old girl from Dallas inside, who's been missing for 9 days and somehow traveled 1,000 miles without her parents knowing where she went. In August 2022, Jorge Ivan Santos Camacho, a 34-year-old man living in a shed behind someone else's house in Lexington, North Carolina, starts playing video games online with a 13-year-old girl in Dallas, Texas. At first, it looks harmless. They talk while gaming. They chat about her day, school frustrations, and regular teenager stuff. He comes off as a friend, someone who listens. But that's the thing about grooming. It never shows up wearing a warning label. It doesn't feel dangerous while it's happening. Instead, it feels like friendship with someone who actually gets it. Over the next few months, the conversations slowly change. Camacho brings up meeting in person. She hesitates. He keeps pushing. Eventually, he offers to pay for her visit. The fee is nothing dramatic, just enough to serve as some kind of incentive. On March 1st, 2023, the girl decides to meet her online friend. She walks out of her apartment complex on Highland Road in Dallas and gets into his waiting car. She doesn't pack anything and she doesn't leave a note. There's no explanation for her family and no trail to follow. When her family realizes she's gone, they immediately file a missing person report, and Dallas police start pulling surveillance footage from around the apartment complex. The CCTV shows a vehicle passing through the area right around the time she vanished, and the license plate is clear enough to read. When they run it, it comes back to Lexington, North Carolina, which is over 1,000 miles away, roughly a 16-hour drive. Police dig into her online accounts next. On Discord, they find months of messages between her and Jorge Camacho. They track his vehicle's movements between North Carolina and Texas, and the timeline lines up perfectly. 9 days after the teenager disappeared on March 10, 2023, at around 6 in the evening, the FBI's Violent Crime Task Force in Texas reached out to the Davidson County Sheriff's Office. By then, they had a location. It pointed to 10438 Linwood Southmont Road in Lexington, a property with a shed out back, and the registered owner of the vehicle seen on camera was living right there. By 6:10 p.m., deputies were already watching the place. They waited until Camacho left the property, then pulled him over for a traffic stop. While some deputies questioned him on the roadside, others moved in and searched the property. Inside the shed, behind the house, they found the missing 13-year-old girl from Dallas. She had been there for 9 days. Camacho was arrested on the spot. He was charged with abducting a child, felonious restraint, human trafficking, multiple offenses involving a minor under 15, and indecent liberties with a child. His bond was set at $1.25 million. On July 17, 2023, Jorge Ivan Santos Camacho entered an Alford plea. He maintained his innocence while acknowledging the prosecutors had enough evidence to convict him, and he was sentenced to serve at least 20 years in prison. Ashton Garcia. You're scrolling through Discord when someone posts a link to a voice channel with the caption, "Watch this." You click the link. The audio comes through. Someone's calling 911, claiming his father is assaulting his mother and has a grenade. You hear screaming in the background. The dispatcher starts to sound urgent, asking for an address. All of a sudden, the chat lights up with laughing emojis and skull reactions. This is something called swatting. It's when someone makes a false report to emergency services, usually claiming a violent situation, so police show up armed and ready. Now, swatting wasn't invented on Discord, but Ashton Connor Garcia turned it into a Discord show. Between June 2022 and March 2023, the 20-year-old from Bremerton, Washington, made at least 20 fake emergency calls across 11 states in the US. Garcia set up Discord chat rooms specifically devoted to swatting, broadcasting his calls live to viewers who could comment in real time or pretend to be victims or perpetrators of the fake crimes. He'd use voice over internet technology to spoof caller IDs and hide behind VPNs, then call emergency services with the same recycled scripts. A father holding the family hostage with firearms, a child shooting his parents, stabbing his mother, or taking advantage of female family members. The goal was to convince dispatchers to send SWAT teams, bomb squads, and armed officers to addresses where people had no idea police were coming. The Discord audience got front row seats to watch the chaos unfold. In Shaker Heights, Ohio, Garcia called to report a father holding his family hostage with a firearm and grenade. Police deployed a full response, only to find a 12-year-old girl at home with 2 adults. When the commander on site, Daniel Grispino, spoke to the caller, Garcia laughed and taunted officers, stating that he was hiding under multiple VPNs. Grispino later testified that the terrified look on the 12-year-old girl's face would stay with him forever. In Edmonton, Alberta, an 8-year-old boy and his mother were jolted awake by a team of law enforcement officers with rifles. 20 officers and 7 civilian staff members were directly involved in the response. In New Jersey, an elementary school was locked down on the first day of school. Over 19 officers were present at the scene, along with several others from a neighboring agency. None of these emergencies were real. All of them were SWAT calls sent to Garcia's Discord server for entertainment value. But swatting was only part of the business model. Garcia gathered personal information about victims and used swatting as leverage for extortion, demanding money, virtual currency, credit card information, and even adult photos. Nothing was off the table. In some instances, he made swatting calls at the request of his friends. Apparently, there was a market for hiring someone to terrorize strangers, and he was taking full advantage of that. According to prosecutors, Garcia called himself a terrorist and bragged about his activities. He even recruited others in an attempt to form a group of cyber criminals focused on swatting and extortion. In July 2022, the FBI received an anonymous tip that Garcia was using his Discord channel to broadcast the swatting calls. More tips followed, and at some point, Garcia got a call from a Pennsylvania detective informing him he was being investigated for making threats and false reporting, but he continued anyway. The FBI finally arrested Garcia at his Seattle residence on March 30, 2023. He pleaded guilty in January 2024 to 2 counts of extortion and 2 counts of threats and hoaxes regarding explosives. He was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. The Michael DeLipe murder. On August 23, 2024, Michael DeLipe steps outside his apartment in Dublin, California to meet someone at the door. His wife says a man named Nick is asking for him. DeLipe recognized the name, but not from work or the neighborhood, from Discord. They shake hands, witnesses see it, surveillance cameras record it, and then things get crazy. All of a sudden, the man who police later identified as Nicholas Palavera from Yuma, Arizona, pulls out a gun and shoots DeLipe in the head, point blank. DeLipe drops instantly on his doorstep, bleeding on the concrete. Palavera gets back into his car and drives away. DeLipe's wife, Cynthia, hears the gunshot from inside. She runs outside, finds her husband on the ground, and calls 911. So, who was Nicholas Palavera? And why did he drive 634 miles from Yuma, Arizona to kill someone he'd been talking to online for 4 years? In 2020, Palavera and DeLipe connected on Discord. They played games and occasionally had conversations. DeLipe's wife says they'd actually met Palavera in person a couple of times over the years at gaming conventions. But she didn't really remember him because most of their relationship was online. They had 4 years of messages, gaming sessions, and Discord chats between them. Then, sometime before DeLipe was shot, they had a dispute. Police won't say what it was about. Maybe they don't know yet. Or maybe they're holding it back for trial. What we do know is that whatever it was enough for Palavera to get in his car and drive 9 hours to Dublin. Less than 24 hours later, Dublin police tracked Palavera to a Walmart parking lot in Barstow, California, halfway back to Arizona. The local police monitored the vehicle and pulled him over as he left. Dublin detectives then drove to Barstow, interviewed Palavera, and seized his vehicle for processing. Inside, they found the alleged murder weapon and the clothes he wore during the shooting. Palavera was taken into custody and transferred to Santa Rita Jail in Dublin. He was charged with murder, carrying a loaded firearm in public, and carrying a concealed weapon, and he's being held without bail. The trial is still pending and the case remains open, but police still haven't said what the dispute was actually about. Maybe it comes out in court, maybe it doesn't. We'll find out soon enough. Tier 3. Trafficked runaways. Runaways don't usually disappear by accident. Someone finds them first, and a lot of the time, that contact happens on Discord. In 2018, a 17-year-old boy from Louisiana thought he'd found someone who understood him. Her name was Eleanor McGlamory, and she was 56 years old. She knew his family, so when she reached out to him on Discord, it didn't feel random. For months, they had regular conversations about his interests, his frustrations at home, and all the usual things teenagers discuss when they're looking for someone who gets it. McGlamory was patient, supportive, and most importantly, she was always there when he needed a vent. Eventually, she floated an idea. Why not come to Florida? You don't have to deal with all that stress at home. It'll be better here. The kid believed her. I mean, why wouldn't he? She knew his family, and she'd been talking to him for months. As soon as she managed to convince him to make the trip, McGlamory set everything up. She even got a 34-year-old man named Curtis Gruwell to drive all the way to Louisiana, pick him up, and bring him back to St. Petersburg, Florida. When everything was in place, the boy just vanished. He didn't tell anyone where he was going, and he didn't leave a note behind. His family woke up, and he was just gone. They reported him missing, and that's when Louisiana authorities started piecing it together. They worked backward through his online activity, pulling Discord chat logs and subpoenaing records from the platform. They finally traced him to a location, Silver Lake Mobile Home Park in St. Petersburg, Florida. In 2018, police arrived at the mobile trailer. Inside, they found the missing boy, along with another teenager and 4 adults. Both boys were sleeping on bare mattresses surrounded by animal cages and feces. One of the perpetrators, Mark Dennis, claimed the second boy was his son but couldn't provide any documentation to prove it. When investigators ran the boy's information, they discovered he'd been missing from Marion County for a year. He left home in May 2017, leaving behind a note asking his family not to search for him. The 17-year-old from Louisiana was returned home. Police don't believe he was molested, though what exactly happened to him during those days in the trailer was never fully disclosed. The 16-year-old, however, had a very different experience. For nearly a year, he was used as an adult slave by the men in the trailer. He was assaulted repeatedly by Dennis, Gruwell, and their associates. He didn't attend school, and he didn't receive medical care. He just existed on that mattress, surrounded by animal waste, until police found him. 7 adults were arrested in connection with the case. They faced charges including conspiracy to commit human trafficking, interference with custody, battery, and possession of illegal material involving minors. The 764 Network. If you spent any time in the darker corners of Discord moderation discussions, you've probably seen the number 764 pop up. If you haven't, that's actually a good sign. It means some of the cleanup worked. The 764 Network was founded in 2021 by Bradley Cadenhead, a 15-year-old from Stephenville, Texas. He named it after the first 3 digits of his hometown zip codes, 76401 and 76402. Online, he went by the username Felix. By that point, Cadenhead had dropped out of high school and started spending most of his time online. A lot of that time went into figuring out how to threaten and manipulate minors into producing explicit material. Once he had it, he used it as leverage to blackmail victims into hurting themselves on camera. At first, he worked alone, but that didn't last. Soon, he started recruiting others, building a network, and setting up a hierarchy where status mattered. The material produced by victims became a kind of currency, and members competed to push things further in order to climb the ranks. The more harm you could convince someone to do to themselves, the higher your standing. By August 2021, the network had grown to a few hundred followers on Discord, and had spread to other platforms, including Telegram, Roblox, Snapchat, and Instagram. On October 25, 2021, police showed up at Cadenhead's mother's apartment in Stephenville with a search warrant. They had traced an upload of child material on Discord back to that address. On his laptop, investigators found images of victims who had carved tributes to him into their flesh. Cadenhead was arrested and taken into custody. That should have been the end of it. The founder gets arrested, the network collapses, and everyone moves on. That's how people expect these stories to go, but that's not what happened. Even 3 months after Cadenhead's arrest, 764 was still active, still recruiting new members, and still causing harm. On November 7, 2021, things escalated again. That day, on a snow-covered mountain in Kyrgyzstan, 25-year-old Samuel Hervey took his own life on camera. He was from Minnesota and had once shown real promise as a biochemistry student. Mental illness had slowly dismantled his life. His marriage ended, his studies stopped, and contact with his family faded. He had been traveling toward India for a Buddhist pilgrimage when COVID restrictions stranded him in Kyrgyzstan. What should have been a short delay turned into weeks in Bishkek hotels as his money ran out. Isolated and desperate, he turned to Discord under the username Asunder. A 15-year-old girl in Eastern Europe, using the name FMLK, noticed him. She was part of the 764 network. In the days leading up to November 7, she stayed in close contact with Hervey through private messages and voice calls, encouraging him and pushing him toward doing it on camera. That day, Hervey created a Discord server called Anhero Tempest, which is slang for someone preparing to die, and went live. More than 24 people watched. According to recordings later reviewed by the Washington Post, they laughed, cheered, and congratulated themselves as it happened. No one was arrested for Hervey's death. FMLK was a minor at the time and later told the Washington Post in 2024 that she regretted her actions. On May 16, 2023, Bradley Cadenhead was sentenced to 80 years in prison. He remains incarcerated in Texas. The network he created at 15, however, continues operating under new names with new leadership. University of California Gore Raid. You're checking your computer science Discord server on a regular Tuesday at UC Irvine to see if anyone's posted notes from today's lecture when, all of a sudden, your screen fills with something else entirely. A video of a decapitated corpse being violated. Another video autoplays, and this time it's children being hurt and animals mutilated. More videos and more images continue to flood the channel. Your hands start to shake, and you feel your stomach turning. On January 9, 2024, at approximately 9 p.m., hackers began flooding UC Irvine-affiliated Discord servers with videos of human corpses being desecrated, decapitations, Islamic State bombing footage, and even violence against children and pets. The attack hit about 30 of the university's 500 Discord servers, exposing roughly 3,000 students, instructors, and alumni to content so graphic that some students were hospitalized with excessive vomiting, panic attacks, and traumatic responses. The servers that got hit included channels for mathematics, computer science, and biological engineering. These were the spaces where students shared lecture notes, coordinated study sessions, and asked questions about homework. In the days after the attack, some students reported being unable to sleep, and others developed panic attacks. The university offered mental health counseling for students, and the tragic incident got nicknamed the Gore Raid. For a measly $1,000, the hackers promised to hold off posting videos for a month. Alina Kim, a computer science and engineering graduate who managed several of the larger Discord servers, considered it a joke. When the attack hit, Kim reached out to leaders of other large Discord communities on campus and created a private coordination server. They shared user IDs of the attackers so moderators could ban them preemptively across multiple servers. Within 24 hours, biomedical engineering student Viet Bao Tran had written a Discord bot that would automatically ban the hackers' accounts. Nearly 100 student moderators coordinated the defense. Kim and her group eventually broke into the hackers' Discord server, used a program to grab all 400 user IDs involved in the attack, and deployed Tran's bot to automatically ban them from all UC Irvine groups simultaneously. The counterattack shut down the raid in 4 days. Some Discord groups were taken completely offline as a precaution. Some were rebuilt from scratch, losing months of academic communications and resources in the process. But the hackers were stopped, not by the university, which didn't manage the Discord servers and therefore couldn't protect them, and not by Discord itself, which took no immediate action, but by students who took it upon themselves to come up with a defense strategy in real time. Kim contacted the FBI's cybercrime division with evidence and user IDs, but the hackers had used VPNs and pseudonymous accounts, making prosecution unlikely. The university issued a statement emphasizing that it doesn't manage Discord servers or their security. They offered information security training and resources, along with encouragement to practice cyber hygiene, which is corporate speak for, "This isn't our problem, but we're sorry it happened to you." Students were left to rebuild their communities and try to unsee images that don't unsee themselves. Tier 4. The Blue Whale Challenge Discord servers. You're scrolling through your feed when a news story makes you pause. A 15-year-old in Texas was found dead, his phone still recording. Police say they found whale symbols carved into his arms and screenshots of tasks lists on his device. The article mentions something called the Blue Whale Challenge and says it started on a Russian social media site before spreading to Discord. Your first thought is the normal one. Poor kid, that's awful. You're about to keep scrolling when one detail sticks out. Participants are told to wake up at 4:20 a.m. Then it hits you. Your little brother has been waking up at 4:20 every morning this week. Suddenly, the story doesn't feel distant anymore. To understand how this even exists, you have to go back to Russia. In 2013, an 18-year-old former psychology student named Philip Budikin starts creating groups on VKontakte, Russia's largest social network. The names are vague and creepy, but easy to ignore. Sea of Whales, Wake Me Up at 4:20 a.m., and F57. At first, they look like moody teen communities, complete with sad posts and dark images. Nothing that screams danger, so nobody pays much attention. 3 years later, journalists investigating Tula and Ryazan start noticing patterns they can't ignore. Victims post strange messages shortly before dying. Whale imagery keeps appearing. Some scars shaped like marine animals, and a lot of them mention something called a curator. When reporters dig deeper, they find the same person behind multiple groups, Philip Budikin, and all of them fall under what's now being called the Blue Whale Challenge. In November 2016, police arrest Budikin in Tumen. He's 21 by then, and he confessed almost immediately. Claims he pushed around 16 teens to do it. So why did he do it? According to Budikin's own statements during interrogation, he believed there are two types of people in the world. People who have value to society and biological waste who cause only harm. He claims he was cleaning society of those he deemed worthless, specifically targeting depressed, isolated teenagers with low self-esteem. During the interview, he also admitted to being bipolar. When asked if he felt remorse, he said his victims were happy to die because he gave them warmth, understanding, and connections that were missing from their real lives. He was essentially playing God with vulnerable kids, deciding who deserved to live based on whether they'd follow his instructions to the end. The process itself is disturbingly simple. They add you to a personal server and introduce you to the Blue Whale Challenge. The rules are pretty straightforward. 1 task per day for 50 days. You have to complete each task, send proof, and tell no one. Disobey and there are consequences. By this point, the curator has your information, your address, your school, and even your family's identity. Day 1 is easy. Wake up at 4:20 a.m. Watch a horror movie alone. A few days later, carve a small whale into your arm. Every task escalates and isolates you further. Soon, sleep deprivation sets in and your judgment weakens. By day 40, you've sent them enough leverage to make leaving feel impossible. In July 2017, Budikin is sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. But the damage is already done. The blueprint is out there. Soon, Blue Whale-style servers start showing up on Discord. Private, invite-only channels with names like Quiet House and Sea of Whales. They don't dominate headlines anymore, mostly because platforms are quick to shut them down. But they don't disappear completely. The Appalachia High School shooting. On September 4, 2024 at 9:45 a.m., 14-year-old Colt Gray walked into his algebra class at Appalachia High School that morning carrying a backpack with an AR-15 style rifle inside. He sat through half the class before asking to go to the bathroom. When he emerged 10 minutes later, he was holding the rifle and he opened fire. Within minutes, 4 people were dead. Richard Aspinwall, a math teacher and football coach, was shot near his classroom doorway. Christina Ermy, another math teacher, was killed while her students watched. It was her birthday, and she'd brought cake and pizza to celebrate with them. 2 students, Mason Schermerhorn and Christian Angulo, both 14 years old, were also killed. 9 others were wounded before police reached the hallway where Gray was standing. He surrendered immediately when they got him. The thing is, this incident, as tragic as it was, didn't start on September 4, 2024. It started 16 months earlier on Discord. On May 21, 2023, the FBI's National Threat Operations Center received anonymous tips from Discord users, one in Australia and one in California, about an account threatening to commit a school shooting. One post from the account stated, "I'm committing a mass shooting and I'm waiting for a good 2 to 3 years." The same account shared screenshots of firearms and talked openly about plans for a future attack on a middle school. The FBI traced the account to Georgia and referred it to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. That same day, investigators drove to a home in Jefferson, Georgia. They found Colin Gray, 54, and his son Colt, who was 13 at the time. The email linked to the Discord account belonged to Colt Gray. Colin told deputies he didn't know what Discord was. Colt said he used it to have an account but deleted it months ago because people kept hacking it. The investigators showed them the email, but neither of them recognized it. The Discord account was created in April 2023, but Colt claimed he deleted his Discord months earlier in February, before the family moved. On top of that, the phone number linked to the threatening account had a different Georgia area code than the one associated with Colt. There were inconsistencies everywhere, so investigations couldn't determine whether or not Colt or Colin was behind the Discord account. So no arrest was made. The case was closed on May 23, 2023. 7 months later, in December 2023, Colin Gray purchased an AR-15 style rifle as a Christmas gift for his son. This was the same Colin Gray who had assured investigators back in May that firearms in the house were locked away, and Colt did not have unfettered access to them. 9 months after receiving the rifle, Colt carried it into Appalachia High School. Colt was charged with 55 counts, including 4 counts of malice murder, and he's being tried as an adult. His father, Cullen, was arrested the day after the shooting and charged with 29 counts of his own, including second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, and cruelty to children. Those charges stem from knowingly allowing his son access to the weapon used in the shooting, the same weapon he had given him as a gift. His bond was set at $20,000, and he remains in custody. If convicted on all counts, he could face up to 180 years in prison. The Colt Gray shooting was horrifying enough, yet this wasn't the only time a student brought tragedy to campus. Took too much. January 4th, 2024 was the first day of school after winter break for the students at Perry High School, Iowa. They started coming in just after 7:30 a.m. Meanwhile, a 17-year-old named Dylan Butler was in the bathroom, assembling guns, and he was posting about it on Discord in real time. Dylan Butler arrived at Perry High School at 7:12 a.m., entering through the main doors like any other student. He was a senior at the school, so nothing about his presence raised concern. He headed directly into a restroom and remained there for about 20 minutes, just long enough to stay off the school's surveillance radar. In the months before the attack in late 2023, Dylan had been active on a Discord server called School Massacres Discussion, where he posted under the username Took Too Much. The server is exactly what it sounds like, a community dedicated to discussing school shootings, history, tactics, perpetrators, the whole thing. It's essentially a gathering of people fascinated by mass violence. Dylan was an active community member, and on January 4th, he told them what he was about to do. He put up a post that read, "At the school, ready for what's to come." 10 minutes later, he posted, "In the bathroom, gearing up, but I'm nervous." Shortly after, he started complaining about another student being in the bathroom. He wanted them gone so he could assemble his guns in peace. At 7:35 a.m., Dylan stepped out of the restroom into the school's common area and began firing. His first round of shotgun blasts struck Amir Jolliffe, a 6th grade student. The school's emergency alert system triggered quickly, and authorities were notified almost immediately. Despite this, Dylan kept moving through the hallways toward one of the exits. That's where the principal, Dan Marburgero, confronted him. Marburgero stepped directly into his path, trying to slow him down and give students time to get away. Dylan shot him. By the time police arrived, the situation was already spiraling. An officer had entered the building at 7:38 a.m. and began searching for the shooter. Less than a minute later, Dylan turned the gun on himself. He was pronounced dead by 7:40 a.m. In under 5 minutes, he had killed a 6th grader, critically wounded the principal, and injured 6 other students. Then he took his own life. Near his body, responders found a homemade explosive device that had not detonated. Principal Marburgero struggled for 10 days before ultimately dying from his injuries. Discord shut down the School Massacres Discussion server after the shooting, banned associated accounts, and issued a statement about not tolerating violent content. A lot of people said they were just doing damage control, but it didn't matter because it was too late for Perry High School. Tier 5. Bianca Devon's murder. You're scrolling through Discord late at night when someone drops photos into the server. It's a body on the pavement and there's blood pooling on the ground. At first, people brush it off as shock content, calling it an edgy Photoshop job. Then someone in the chat recognizes her. She's in the server. Her username is right there in the member list, showing she was online a few hours earlier. Bianca Devons was 17, an e-girl with a presence on Instagram and Discord, active in communities around art, music, and aesthetics. On July 14, 2019, in Utica, New York, she went to a concert with Brandon Clark, a 21-year-old she'd met online. The nature of their relationship remains unclear, whether it was friendship, romantic interest, or something more complicated. But what happened afterward was documented with a kind of clarity usually reserved for evidence folders. After the concert ended, Clark drove Bianca to a dead-end road where the pavement turns to gravel, stopped the car, and slit her throat. Then, he arranged her body and photographed it from multiple angles. He posted the images to Discord first, uploading them to a server where both he and Bianca were members, with a caption that made it clear what he had done. Then he moved to Instagram, uploaded the same photos, and tagged Bianca's accounts. This meant anyone who looked her up, friends checking if she got home safe, family wondering why she wasn't answering her phone, would be directed to images of her death instead. While people were viewing and sharing these images, Clark remained at the scene, lying beside Bianca's body and posting selfies of his own complete with blood running down his neck and soaking into his shirt. He called 911 and kept his voice steady as he explained what he'd done and gave them the exact location. Then he lay down and waited. When police arrived, they found him conscious but breathing, still holding his phone. He'd wanted to die, but things didn't work out the way he wanted them to. During interrogation and his trial, Clark explained why he did it. He said Bianca had kissed another man at the concert and he felt disrespected. He eventually pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and received a sentence of 25 years to life. Minhas. Around midnight on July 28, 2019, Minhas sent his friend a Discord message that read, "I just hurt my whole family, and I'll probably spend the rest of my life in prison if I make it through this. I hope that at some point I made you laugh. I hope you remember the good moments. I'm going to miss you all." So you can get the full picture. Let's backtrack a little bit. Minhas Zaman belonged to a Discord community called Perfect World Void, named after the Chinese MMO Perfect World. He spent years there, gaming, chatting, and forming friendships that became more real to him than the world outside. Slowly, the line between his online identity and his real life blurred. After being accepted into York University in Toronto, Minhas fell behind almost immediately. Instead of telling his family, he dropped out quietly and built a lie to cover the truth. For years, he forged transcripts, fake schedules, and school updates, making his parents believe he was progressing through an engineering degree. But the lie had an expiration date. His graduation was set for July 28, 2019, and as the day approached, the pressure crushed him. He had no degree, no plan, and no way to explain the deception, so he created a horrifying solution. He decided to murder his family. The day before his supposed graduation, he killed his mother and grandmother. Afterwards, he returned to Discord and began sending disturbing messages filled with guilt. When someone asked if he had gotten everyone, he responded, "Waiting for my sister in 5 minutes, dad in an hour." Most people in the server didn't take him seriously. They assumed it was some kind of dark joke until he posted the first photo, then another, and another. That's when panic set in. Members of the community scrambled to figure out his location. Some checked the metadata and IP trail, narrowing it down to Toronto. A user from Minnesota contacted Toronto police and shared everything they knew. Meanwhile, Minhas kept messaging the group. He said his family didn't deserve the shame of having a son like him and claimed he killed them to spare them. Moments before his arrest, one of his friends asked what he planned to do now that he had carried out his plan. Unaware that officers were already closing in on him, he replied, "Eat junk food, see my ex, drink, smoke." Then, as the police breached the home, he sent his final message. "The police are here. Goodbye." Discord removed the server and all its mirrors shortly after. Minhas was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. He later received a life sentence with no possibility of parole for 40 years. San Patricio County family murder. Someone in your Discord server posts photos with no context, just images. It takes a moment to understand what you're looking at. Bodies inside what appears to be an RV. There's blood visible on the walls and furniture. Then the realization settles. These aren't screenshots from a horror film or edgy shock content. The person who posted them is in the server. You've been gaming with them, and they just killed their family. 15-year-old William Quincy Colburn III lived in an RV at Arkansas Oaks RV Resort in San Patricio County, Texas, with his father, William Jr., his mother, Jana, and his 13-year-old sister, Emma, and 2 dogs. On September 15, 2021, just before 6:30 p.m., he took one of the family's handguns and shot his sister first, then both parents, and then the dogs. Why he did it, no one knows. Law enforcement never released a motive, and Quincy left no explanation. After the shooting, he opened Discord and started distributing photos. He sent them to multiple people across different servers, with the assumption that his audience would want to see what he'd been up to. The images went to users he'd been chatting with in gaming communities, but he didn't limit himself to just private messages. He posted in servers and made statements about what he'd done, along with threats to continue the violence at an area school. He was homeschooled and he didn't actually specify which school he meant to attack, but that didn't make things any less frightening. Discord users across the country began calling Texas law enforcement. People from different states were reporting the same thing. Someone they'd been playing games with had just committed murder and was posting about it online. Law enforcement from multiple agencies tracked Quincy to the RV park just after 1 a.m. on September 16th. They surrounded the RV and asked him to come outside. He declined. Then they heard a single gunshot and the sound of a body hitting the floor. Inside, they found Quincy dead from a self-inflicted wound, along with his parents, his sister, and both dogs. Tier 6. The Buffalo Top Supermarket Shooting. What's the standard operating procedure when someone announces a mass shooting to 65 people half an hour in advance? Apparently nothing. On June 28, 2021, Peyton Gendron was a senior at Susquehanna Valley High School in Conklin, New York. During an online class, a teacher asked about his post-graduation plans. According to Governor Kathy Hochul, Gendron responded with something that should have been a red flag. His response was, "I want to murder and commit suicide." The teacher questioned him about it. Gendron said he was joking. The teacher reported it anyway, and the school called the New York State Police. An officer went to Gendron's home, where he repeated that it was a joke. Then, the police took him to Binghamton General Hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. After a day and a half, he was released with no involuntary commitment, and no red flag order filed to prevent him from purchasing guns. He graduated 2 weeks later and fell off the investigators' radar completely. 5 months later, in November 2021, Gendron walked into Vintage Firearms in Endicott, New York, and legally purchased a Bushmaster XM15 AR-15 style rifle. That same month, he started using a private Discord server as a personal diary. Over the next 6 months, he posted more than 1 million messages, chats, attachments, videos, photos, and links. Materials that FBI agents later spent 3 months analyzing. In December, he announced his intentions on Discord, stating he wanted to kill people he called replacers. By February 2022, he'd researched zip codes with the highest black populations and selected Buffalo's 14208 zip code as his target. The following month, he visited a Tops Friendly Market supermarket on Jefferson Avenue in Buffalo, a location he'd chosen specifically because it was in a predominantly black neighborhood. He conducted surveillance with the diligence of a graduate student writing a thesis, mapping aisles, sketching floor plans, and documenting camera positions and security details. His Discord logs even tracked technical concerns about live streaming, bandwidth issues, connectivity problems between his phone and GoPro, and how to play music during the attack. On May 14, 2022, between 2:03 p.m. and 2:14 p.m., approximately 30 minutes before the shooting, Gendron sent 13 messages to 65 Discord users, inviting them to his private server. 15 people accepted the invitation. When they joined, they could scroll back through months of racist creeds, detailed attack plans, and reconnaissance notes documenting exactly what he was about to do. Everything was there, time-stamped and preserved like evidence for a court case that hadn't happened yet. None of them contacted authorities. At 2:30 p.m., Gendron arrived at the supermarket, wearing body armor and a military helmet with a GoPro camera attached. He carried the Bushmaster rifle, which he'd marked with racial slurs and the phrase, "the Great Replacement," which is a white supremacist conspiracy theory. He live-streamed the attack on Twitch. He shot 4 people in the parking lot, killing 3, then entered the store. In total, he shot 13 people, 11 of them black. 10 of them died. The live stream ran for about 2 minutes before Twitch shut it down. When police arrived, Gendron surrendered without resistance. On November 28, 2022, Gendron pleaded guilty to all state charges, including domestic terrorism motivated by hate, 10 counts of first-degree murder, and 3 counts of attempted murder as a hate crime. 3 months later, on February 15, 2023, he was sentenced to 11 concurrent life sentences without the possibility of parole. Robert Crimo. You're scrolling through Documenting Reality, a forum where people share graphic footage of death and violence, when you see a familiar face in the news. It's one of the most active users, someone who's posted thousands of times over the years with shootings, beheadings, and the usual catalog of human misery. Except now, his photo is plastered across every news channel. Police are hunting him down for mass murder. The whole thing started on the morning of July 4, 2022, in Highland Park, Illinois, a wealthy suburb about 25 miles north of Chicago. The town was holding its annual 4th of July parade, and families had lined Central Avenue with lawn chairs and American flags, ready for the celebration. Robert Bobby Crimo III, 21 years old, climbed onto the rooftop of a building overlooking the parade route and positioned himself with a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 rifle. At 10:15 a.m., he opened fire. 7 people were killed, and 48 others were injured, including an 8-year-old boy who was paralyzed by a shot to the back. After the shooting, Crimo climbed down, blended into the fleeing crowd, and went to his mother's house, where he took her 2010 Honda Fit. He drove to Madison, Wisconsin, about 2 hours away, where he considered opening fire at another 4th of July celebration before deciding against it. He discarded his phone in Middleton, Wisconsin, and drove back to Illinois. Meanwhile, the police had launched a manhunt. They released his photo and description to the public, and hours later, an officer spotted him driving near Lake Forest, about 5 miles north of Highland Park. A brief chase followed before he was pulled over and arrested without incident. By the time they got him into custody, he'd been on the run for roughly 8 hours. Long before that morning, Cremo had been building an audience online. On Discord, he operated under the rap name Awake the Rapper and performed music that had been streamed millions of times on Spotify before the service pulled it down after the shooting. He maintained his own Discord server called SS, supposedly short for Sleepy Squad, his music collective. The server hosted fans, friends, and people who followed his music. Members shared memes and links to his songs, posted political content, and traded the kind of graphic material that reflected Cremo's fascination with death. The next time anyone heard from him, police were circulating his photo while looking for a mass shooter. No one knows why he did it. Law enforcement confirmed it wasn't racially or religiously motivated. Cremo pleaded guilty to all charges on March 3, 2025. 2 months later, on April 24, he was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences, plus 2,400 years without parole. "15 entries, 4 layers. From a kid poisoning his dad to cults that prey on girls, this is the disturbing Reddit iceberg. Let's start at the surface. Tier 1. Please help. There's this place on Reddit called Illegal Advice, meant for, well, legal advice. Useful stuff, really. That's where we meet the 14-year-old user, Forward Jeweler 9336. A kid who thought a glass of bleach mixed with pink lemonade was the solution to his problems. So, what's the deal? The kid was fed up with his dad. Instead of talking it out or maybe, I don't know, getting a phone plan for some therapy apps, he thought it'd be easier to just take dad out of the equation altogether. He mixes bleach into the lemonade, stirs it, adds ice, and hands it to his dad, who starts drinking it without suspecting a thing. For the next few hours, Forward Jeweler 9336 waited. Hours pass. No convulsions, no foaming at the mouth, just a sore throat. The kid panics, posts the whole situation online, and Reddit users, being Reddit users, spend more time telling him to get ready for jail than helping. In the end, the dad gets a mild cold and the kid gets a referral to therapy. If you're wondering, no, he didn't get arrested, which is wild, considering that is very much attempted murder. Slugfest. It starts like a relationship post you scroll past on your lunch break. A woman on relationship advice talking about how her partner's been acting strange lately. The partner, 24, started acting strange a month and a half ago, putting fruit in the garden, feeding the mice. Seemed sweet at first. Then he started cooking for her, baking cakes, a new hobby. Except she felt sick after eating. She chalked it up to lack of sleep and, well, hormones. Then one day, a friend of his walks into her workplace and spills the truth. Her partner had been collecting slugs, blending them up and putting them in her food. The friend even had pictures, a slug jar, a blender full of slime, even screenshots. Her reaction? Disgust and confusion, to say the least. She confronts him, obviously, but instead of coming clean and apologizing or something, the guy accuses her of snooping, claims it's a joke. A joke? Blended slugs? But it gets worse. She goes to urgent care. High levels of metaldehyde in her blood, ulcers in her stomach, originally thought to be stress. Now they suspect poisoning, infection, possible heart problems. She contacts the police and gives a statement, but the guy refuses to talk, except to his friend. He eventually admits to what he called experiments, starting months after they moved in together. And what were these experiments, you ask? Well, he swapped her meds with salt, fed her real meat knowing she had IBS, and even spit on her toast. Then came the joke that crossed the line. One of her pet giant African land snails went missing. She assumed it escaped, but no, it didn't. Her dear old boyfriend had scooped it out of its shell, cooked it, and served it to her in curry. He even laughed when she ate it. He even rubbed her toothbrush on the toilet, but then washed it. He thought that was too far. Yeah, cooking her pet is okay, but an unsanitary toothbrush is where he draws the line. He later tells someone he did it because he loves her and wanted to take care of her, as if treating someone like a science experiment is romantic. Eventually, he's diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, and the woman realizes their entire relationship was a test, not out of love or trust, but of how far he could push someone before they broke. And just when it seems like the worst is over, her doctor shrugs off the poisoning, saying it's fine because she was overweight anyway. As of a few months ago, user smallbean197 was active and doing well, which is more than can be said for the slugs. Mother's love. I'm putting my extremely profoundly disabled 7-year-old into a residential facility so I can forget he exists. I'm not sorry. That's how the post on Reddit's subreddit Confession begins. Single mom, 2 sons, one 12 and the other 7. The father, he's dead. A work accident, they say. Except she knows better. It was suicide, and the younger disabled son was the reason. The diagnosis for her younger son was supposed to be Down syndrome, something difficult but not impossible. But instead, it turned out to be a rare chromosomal deletion so severe that he had no awareness of the world, no emotional response, and no recognition of anyone around him, just barely existing. He was tube-fed, oxygen, diapers, the endless cycle of care, a body with no mind. She calls him it, a thing, a potato. Like, if she stops seeing him as human, the guilt will hurt less. She admits the unthinkable. She doesn't love him. There's nothing to love. No personality or connection. Just obligation, guilt, and pure resentment. The oldest son suffers. He's neglected, overshadowed. His medical needs are delayed because all resources are poured into the younger son's endless care. And the mother's dreams of law school were abandoned. The breaking point, she hears a scream, runs in, and finds the older son hitting his brother, sobbing, shouting that this thing ruined their lives. And she doesn't stop him. She just watches. That's when she decides he has to go. She arranges for residential care, full-time staff, specialized support, weekends off. She gets silence, maybe peace, maybe not. She posts all of it online, then goes one step further, offers to prove it. Documents, real names, medical files. She doesn't want forgiveness. She wants validation. As if making it real makes it okay. The irony? She's more concerned with proving she's telling the truth than what it means. In her eyes, the boy didn't live. He simply existed. A mistake she would have aborted if she knew he would have ended up like this. I miss home. I'm not from here. Posted to subreddit Paranormal, the story comes from a man who's convinced he's not from this version of reality. Not this city, not this world, not this timeline. And no, he's not joking. Apparently, this has been eating at him for 24 years. Therapists, they're useless. Tell him it's repressed memories or he's straight up crazy. Okay, so backstory, born in San Diego, classic California kid. Divorced parents, natch. Mom was a looker, did some glamour modeling. Dad worked for the city. Sounds almost normal. Almost. Then it happens. September 17th, 1996. He's 6 years old, staying with his grandparents in Riverside. Small farm, the whole 9 yards. Chickens, pigs, suicidal ducks, standard farm stuff. Grandpa warns him about a rattlesnake. Being a bright kid, 6-year-old him decides to go hunting for it. Because what could possibly go wrong? He finds this snake in the well house. He finds it, slams the door, runs to tell Grandpa. And when he comes back, everything is wrong. The furniture's different. The wallpaper's changed. Family photos replaced with strangers. The chicken coop is gone. Even the neighbor's house has changed color. The woman who answers the door has never seen him before. The kid starts bawling, as you might expect. Then it gets worse. The police show up. They can't find his parents. The apartment his mom lived in doesn't exist. No one with his dad's name works for the city. It's like he was wiped off the face of the earth. They tried everything. Fingerprints, questions, ID. Nothing lines up. Some cop lady gives him a stuffed Dalmatian, Sparky, because a stuffed dog is totally going to fix this interdimensional fiasco. He gets shuffled into foster care, and every few weeks, another grieving family shows up, hoping he's their missing kid. He never is. Every visit ends in disappointment for everyone. Years go by. He never finds his parents. He becomes a ward of the state, gets into trouble, ends up in juvie, because why not? The universe already hates him, might as well give it a reason. Now he's telling his story on Reddit, to us, hoping we'll believe him. Maybe? Hoping we can explain it? Doubtful. Hoping to finally exorcise this ghost from his past? Probably. The big question, of course, what's different about the place he came from? He was 6, thought California was its own country, didn't know much, except the president wasn't Bill Clinton. Some guy named Robert something something. The post goes viral. People are all over it, searching for clues, trying to debunk it. He asks people to keep it private, protect his family, which you gotta respect. So what happened? Did this kid stumble into a parallel universe? Did he get abducted by aliens and his memories scrambled? Was it all a dream? A mental breakdown? Or is he just pulling our collective leg? Your guess is as good as mine. But do drop your thoughts and theories on this in the comments below. He never found his parents, but he still has Sparky, that ratty old Dalmatian. Tier 2. Carl Harold. This Carl Harold guy, user Carl H, showed up on Reddit back in 06. A harmless enough start. Early adopter. Probably thought he was cool. Fast forward a few years, and he's running Carl H programming. Free lessons, helpful advice. Apparently people ate that up. He even talked someone down from the ledge on subreddit Suicide Watch. Model Redditor, right? He builds a following, starts a blog, a YouTube channel, gains 30,000 plus subs, becomes Redditor of the Day in 2012, posts about his family, says he loves spending time with them, which in hindsight should have raised a red flag the size of Kansas. Things are going well. Too well, actually. Until November 2013. Carl vanishes from the internet. Everything goes dark. No goodbye, no explanation. Just poof, gone. Subscribers are left wondering what happened. Sick? Vacation? The truth was much, much worse. Turns out the FBI gets some disturbing material, featuring a 9-year-old boy, Carl's own son, held captive and tortured. And Carl, he wasn't just taking a break. He was part of it. A severe abuser. He and his partner get arrested. The online community loses its mind. A year later, in November 2014, 30 counts were filed against Harold and his partner. Conspiracy, sodomy, child abuse, the list goes on and on. He soon faces federal charges for CP of his own son. But before he can face a judge, he's found dead in his cell. Suicide by hanging. Yeah, the same guy who talked another Redditor out of committing the unthinkable. Authorities are shocked, his lawyers in disbelief, and the online community mostly relieved. And that should have been the end, but it wasn't. July 2nd, 2016. A post pops up on Carl H Programming, Carl's personal programming subreddit. And the poster? He claims to be Carl himself, narrating his escape, how he faked his death and is now living in Russia. His website is back online. The internet loses its mind again. How can it be Carl? Where's the proof? And if it was someone else, how did they get access to his personal subreddit? He never answers. Carl vanishes again. Most people think he's dead, but there's no real confirmation. His Reddit account and YouTube channel still exist. And who posted that final thread? Might be a troll. A prank by a relative who stumbled upon Carl's stuff after his death. Or maybe it really was Carl, deep in the woods. So imagine this. You're hiking deep in the woods. Like really deep. 5 miles from civilization deep. You think you're alone with nature. You think you're getting away from it all. Then you stumble upon this. Yeah, not exactly the scene you were expecting, huh? We're talking skulls. Animal skulls mostly, but arranged artistically. Or something way more sinister. I mean, just look at those damn things. There's one that kinda looks like a crucifix, but made from bones, nailed to a tree. Then there's a tree stump, absolutely covered in skulls. Carved symbols, glory to God scrawled across one. And then there's the energy. You know, that feeling. The one that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. The one that tells you very clearly that you're not alone, that something's watching. So this hiker, El Kukui24, finds this thing, snaps some photos, posts them on Reddit, naturally. Asks if anyone knows what it is. And the next day, gone. Vanished. Like it was never there. Like you imagined the whole thing. Which, honestly, would be preferable. But unfortunately, he had the photos. Now, what is this thing? Could it just be a bunch of teenagers messing around? Honestly? Maybe some Wiccan group being edgy? Or maybe the background for a photo shoot? Or, and stick with me here, an actual ritual site. A shrine. A summoning point. A warning. Maybe a tribute to something they don't want to name. And whoever made it clearly came back, cleaned it up. Or did the thing that the site was meant to attract simply absorb it? Maybe the bones came alive and just walked away. Just messing with you. But honestly, there are better questions to ask, like, why are you 5 miles deep in the woods? Why are you photographing bone sculptures? And why, after seeing this, are you still standing there? And all I know is, if you stumble upon something like this, 5 miles deep in the woods, turn around, walk away, pretend you didn't see it. The office in the middle of nowhere. 12 years ago, a Redditor named Boracay111 is working for this company that sends laborers to farms in rural Australia. Basically, you tell them when you're free, and they ship you off to the middle of nowhere to do whatever needs doing. Hard work, long hours, but decent pay if you get lucky with your crew. This particular job is on a massive property, like the size of Maryland. 9 hours from Sydney, 40 minutes from the nearest town. The middle of, well, nowhere, like I said. He's clearing bushland with 3 other guys, supervised by the farm owner, Jeremy. It's brutally hot that summer. So one day, when the temperature hits 100 degrees Fahrenheit, Jeremy offers to take them to a waterhole 25-minute drive north to cool off. The other guy stays behind. Boracay 111 hops in the truck. They're driving through this wide, empty landscape. Brown, red, flat, and boring. Jeremy's not much of a talker. After about 20 minutes, Jeremy perks up, jabs Boracay 111 in the ribs, and points, "Do you see that over there? Beneath the 2 dead trees?" Now, in the outback, anything that isn't brown sticks out like crazy. And what they see is a giant, bright, blue angular structure in the distance. They get closer, and it's a massive blue shipping container, just sitting there. Jeremy's confused. He says he hasn't seen it before, and he drives through this area all the time. Naturally, he wants to check it out. Boracay 111 gets a bad feeling. You know the kind. The "we're not supposed to be here" kind. But Jeremy insists. It's his farm after all. And as they get closer, it gets even weirder. There's a big thumping diesel generator behind the container, and CCTV cameras on each side, motion activated, buzzing back and forth, following them. Boracay 111 tries to reason with Jeremy, saying with all this security, someone clearly doesn't want them there. They should just leave. Jeremy, who apparently skipped the horror movie rulebook, says nope, they're going in. Despite the surveillance, there's just a small padlock on the door. They break it open with some bolt cutters and step inside. The first thing they notice is the cold air. The place is air conditioned. They find a light switch, and suddenly, they're in some kind of sophisticated IT setup. Flashing LEDs, the hum of hard drives, computer equipment lining the walls piled high, plastic storage boxes scattered around, desks with computer monitors in the middle, complete with rolling office chairs. They mess with the computers for a while, but neither of them are tech savvy. It's just endless lists of computer talk, like some old Napster download screen. Data is constantly being picked up, received, and recorded. Boracay 111 gives up on the computers and walks over to the pile of storage boxes. He's pretty sure no one else is there, but he's still on edge. Against his better judgment, he decides to see what's inside. What he finds makes him want to throw up. The boxes are full of posters, DVDs, and photos, all of illegal material involving children. And it's all neatly organized into folders and small boxes. Someone's organized. He runs back to Jeremy, panicked. They immediately drive straight back to the farmhouse and call the police. But this is the outback. No one's close. By the time the cops arrive, it's nearly an hour later. They all pile into 2 four-wheel drives and head back to the container. And that's when it gets worse. By the time they get back, the container door is open and there's a fire inside. They have 2 small extinguishers, but they do nothing. The fire department takes an hour to get there. By then, most of the damage is done. An arson report finds almost no evidence of the computer equipment, just traces of paper and cardboard. Whoever ran that place had time to clean it out and torch the rest. The property is huge and there's no way to track them. The police didn't take them seriously at first, so aerial surveillance was impossible. The investigation goes cold. And Boracay 111, he'll never forget what he saw in those boxes. Tier 3, the babysitter. This one starts innocently enough. A question on subreddit Ask Reddit. People of Reddit. Have you ever killed anyone? If so, what were the circumstances? Just regular, healthy internet conversation. Then this throwaway account chimes in. They had killed a baby when they were 12 years old while babysitting. Accidental, supposedly. But the details are what make this story so unsettling. So she was babysitting for a family in her subdivision. 2 little girls, ages 3 and 6, and a 5-month-old baby. She admits she wasn't great with babies. Nervous, not exactly the responsible type. The girls were reading, and the baby started crying. She picked her up, took her to the kitchen to warm up a bottle, and then she just dropped her. No tripping, no sudden movements, no excuses. Just dropped her on the tile floor. And that was it. The baby was dead, instantly. Here's where it gets really weird. She says she felt calm, like she turned into a robot. She tells the other girls to go to the basement, called her dad, told him what happened. Then she just sat at the kitchen table for 10 minutes, waiting, while a dead baby lay on the floor. Her dad arrived, took the girls to their house. Then he drove her and the body to the hospital. Obviously, nothing could be done. The baby was dead. She wasn't charged, ruled an accidental death. Criminally negligent manslaughter was on the table, but her age saved her. But the guilt never went away. Several decades later, she still feels it every day. Claims she can't have children because of it. Can't even drive past the family's old house without throwing up. The family moved, but the scars remained. Every time she saw one of them, she'd relive that moment. A confession. This one starts on subreddit Confessions. A user named Mesk997 wants to get something off his chest. A bad decision he made years ago, but that's Reddit for you. He was a vendor on the dark net. Selling drugs, of course. Why? Too lazy to get a real job. Too lazy to code for a startup. But not too lazy to order fentanyl off the internet and ruin lives. The darknet is basically a secret part of the internet. Illegal stuff happens there. Mostly drug deals, surprisingly enough. He read about the Silk Road. Ross Ulbricht, obsessed over OPSEC. All sorts of dark web stuff. All to start his own online store. Or maybe he just needed to feel like he was smarter than everyone else. The Silk Road was basically Amazon, but for drugs. Ross Ulbricht was the guy who created it. He got caught and went to jail. OPSEC is short for Operation Security. It basically means being careful so you don't get caught doing illegal stuff, which, spoiler alert, didn't work out. He started with ketamine, meth, and some cheap weed. Standard stuff. Made about $25,000 apparently. Had a scam happen too. Not enough to ruin him. A few months in, he found a new connection. A guy willing to give him anything he wanted. Mescaline, LSD, mushrooms, PCP, and even fentanyl. The kind of shopping a drug dealer dreams of. Some make you hallucinate, some make you feel good, and some make you want to clean your house at 3 a.m. Fentanyl is a super strong painkiller. Like, so strong it can kill you. And this connection had tons of it, and Mesk 997 got his hands on it. He put all his customers into an Excel spreadsheet. Addresses, names, zip codes, the usual. He was selling some white powdered mescaline, and the fentanyl was a white powder too. You can see where this is going. Long story short, the Excel sheet got screwed up. About 7 people's mescaline orders got filled with fentanyl instead. He sent them out, didn't notice for a few days, and then kept selling drugs to anyone who wanted him. A few days later, someone contacted him, said their friend died from his mescaline. Of course, Mesk 997 called bullshit. Checked his order log. He had 11 grams more mescaline than he should have. Still doesn't know how it happened. He checked the market. A couple of people finalized their orders. None from that specific day. The mescaline buyers hadn't logged in for days. He knew what happened. He deactivated his vendor account immediately. He sold the rest of his drugs, converted his Bitcoin into cash, and moved. Didn't speak to anyone for weeks and found a job in a restaurant, living in a city he always wanted to. He never touched drugs again. Never had anything to do with that life. He still thinks about them every night. He Googled their names a few days later. Found info on 4 customers that definitely died. One customer shared it with a friend. They both died. He was responsible for 5 deaths, possibly more, because he couldn't manage columns in Excel. Now he's posting on Reddit, because where else would you confess to accidentally killing several people? He's a recluse, works his job, plays video games. People distance themselves. He's a shell of his former self, he says. He can't even tell a therapist about it. Doesn't feel like he deserves to be alive. Now that the confession is out, he thought maybe he'll feel better. He didn't. He never made a follow-up post. Dad might not be a murderer. Let's rewind to September 2015. A small town and a messy love triangle. Fairly simple stuff, yet. But as the narrator's username suggests, things will take a turn for the worse. We've got the dad, a hunter, kind of down on his luck. His ex, Sherry, who just inherited some serious cash. And then there's Billy, the dad's old buddy. Nerdy guy. Somewhat of a weirdo. Things first start to get rather complicated when Sherry starts fooling around with Billy. Dad's bummed, but he kind of just shrugs it off. They all live in the same town, so they run into each other sometimes, which is, as you'd expect, awkward. Thanksgiving rolls around, and Dad's not doing great. Bad back, lost his job, waiting for a lawsuit to pay out. But come December, he's getting back to himself, hanging out with his kid, our narrator, going to shows, just being a dad. Then, one morning, early at around 8 a.m., Dad calls his kid. Sounds great. They laugh, make plans. Oh, and he mentions that Sherry called earlier, but he blew her off. Just a quick mention, right? Turns out, that's the key to the whole thing. That night, the phone rings. It's a friend of the family. Dad's dead. That's all they know. Car crash? Heart attack? Then, Dad's brothers and grandmothers show up and the truth is worse than imagined. Sherry's dead too. Murder-suicide. Billy, the old buddy, found the bodies. He's talking to the cops. Cops say murder-suicide. Oh, and they throw in, casually, that the two had apparently gotten intimate right before it happened. The story? Dad killed Sherry. Felt guilty, paced around for a bit, and then shot himself. Except none of it tracks. Dad and Sherry had broken up months ago. He wasn't heartbroken. He didn't know where she lived. He ignored her call that morning. And now he's showing up to her new place, stealing her gun, and having one last hookup before murder-suicide? The narrator's confused, but what can they do? They have a funeral to plan, grieving to do, and have to assume that the police know what they're doing. Days later, the narrator visits Dad's place. Lights are on, TV's still playing, coffee's out, cat hasn't been fed. It looks like someone who planned to come back. Red flag. Then they check Dad's phone. Turns out he did answer Sherry's call, but for just 11 seconds. And then they find these weird texts that definitely weren't written by the father. His grammar was atrocious. And he didn't even know how to text, let alone use T9 in 2015. Red flag number 2. Now everyone starts saying the same thing. Something's off. The kid feels it too, but has no proof. Just a gut feeling. They try to ignore it. Then, 5 years later, someone calls the narrator. Says Billy's been running scams for years. And Sherry? Not the first dead girlfriend he found. In fact, she's number 3. Girlfriend number 1 inherited cash, found dead at the bottom of the stairs. Girlfriend number 2, Sherry, same pattern. Girlfriend number 3, already sick, inherits money, dies under Billy's watch. He finds her body too. Suddenly, all those odd details click. Billy was the only witness. He took photos of the bodies, bragged about them, changed the story every time he told it, and the cops never questioned him because they thought the killer was already dead. The narrator pieces it together. Billy went to Sherry's house that morning, had consensual intimacy, killed her, then used her phone to call Dad, the 7 a.m. call. Dad didn't answer. Billy went to work to establish his story, used his lunch break, the unaccounted for hour, to go back to Sherry's house and call Dad again, the 11-second call. Tricked Dad into coming over, caught him off guard, killed him, and then went back to work. Later, he found the bodies, took the photos, and called the police. The narrator's left with nothing but a theory, no evidence, and zero help. The cops aren't interested. The state won't reopen it. All they want now is to clear their dad's name, but who do you even talk to? The local police? The FBI? The state attorney general? No one can help. Do they need a private investigator? An attorney? Is it even worth looking into? And what if they're wrong? And they're willing to be wrong, but not silent. 3 dead girlfriends, 1 guy, a closed case that doesn't add up. So they're turning to Reddit, hoping someone, somewhere, has an answer. This mess is far from over. That's the sad part. It's still unsolved. Stepdad murderer. A 16-year-old kid. A summer of secrets. And a friendship that ends in a bloodbath. It starts with the basics. 2 boys. Let's call them Johnny and, well, our throwaway narrator. Been friends since 5th grade. Good kids, mostly. Some minor pranks, TPing houses, giving a dog the runs, nothing too crazy. Then summer hits. Johnny goes to his family's cottage for a few weeks. Comes back a bit changed, distant, depressed. Something's clearly wrong. September rolls around, school starts, and Johnny finally pulls the narrator aside, drops a bomb. The stepdad at the cottage that summer had physically assaulted and abused him multiple times and beat his mom. The narrator asks the obvious questions. Did he tell the police? Did he tell his mom? The answer to both is no. Then Johnny says he wants to kill the stepdad. The narrator doesn't take him seriously, makes some dumb jokes about poisoning, burning him alive, but Johnny says he's dead serious, as dead as he wants his stepdad to be, and he needs help. For reasons he can't explain even now, decades later, the narrator agrees. A week goes by. Johnny says the stepdad did it again the night before. They're going to kill him today. After school, they head to Johnny's house. Stepdad's already passed out drunk on the couch. Mom's at work. They grab a snack in the kitchen. Johnny hands the narrator a knife, lays out the plan. Johnny's gonna hold him down and the narrator's going to stab him. Of course, the plan goes sideways, fast. 2 16-year-olds aren't exactly muscle-bound assassins. They can't hold down a drunk, violent man. Johnny grabs the stepdad and he explodes, yelling, throwing Johnny against the wall. The narrator runs. Stepdad chases him and they both fall down the stairs. The narrator tries to run upstairs to Johnny's room, but he slips. The stepdad grabs his ankle as he falls, and they both tumble down the stairs. In a fit of rage, as you can imagine, the stepdad tries to grab the knife. The narrator panics, tries to throw the knife away, but he ends up stabbing the stepdad right between the ribs. An accident. The stepdad falls to the ground, cursing and yelling some more. The narrator tells Johnny what happened, who's still sitting against the wall, crying, and they run. A few hours later, they come back. Figuring they're in big trouble, they should just apologize, take their punishment. But when they get inside, the stepdad's still lying there, not moving, no sound. Johnny starts freaking out, saying the narrator killed him. The narrator says it was an accident, but Johnny's the one who wanted to kill him in the first place. They sit in the living room, watching cartoons, saying nothing, waiting for Johnny's mom to come home. It was a small town back then. Calling the police wasn't even a thought. The mom gets home, sees the body, calls the sheriff. They take away the body, ask questions. Turns out the narrator punctured the stepdad's lung, which was filled up with blood. He died from that. Then, obviously, go to court. The case against Johnny is dismissed. It's all the narrator's fault, they said. The mom never mentions the beatings. Johnny never mentions physical assault and abuse. The narrator's alone, and he goes to jail for 6 years. Then, finally, the truth comes out. The mom admits the beatings. Johnny confesses to the abuse and how the narrator killed the stepdad in self-defense. The narrator's released from jail, but by now, it had already cost him 2,192 days. Our narrator moves away from his hometown, ends up in New York, never sees Johnny or his mom again. He's grateful they told the truth, but it took too long, and he can never forgive Johnny for that. Tier 4. Subreddit Watch People Die. It started innocently enough, or as innocent as Reddit can get. Subreddit Watch People Die. A subreddit dedicated to, well, watching people die. Accidents, war footage, suicides, executions, you name it. At first glance, it might sound like shock value stuff, but for a while it operated within Reddit's loose definition of acceptable. Emphasis on loose. People used to share anything and everything they found or filmed. Car crashes, factory mishaps, someone getting too close to a wild animal for a selfie. Natural causes, mostly. But then it got worse, predictably. The subreddit became a dumping ground for the absolute worst of humanity. Cartel snuff films, terrorist propaganda, hours and hours of footage filmed during the abuse, torture, and murder of people, including women and children. The kind of stuff that makes you want to scrub your brain with bleach. But the community loved it. Some people became desensitized, started making jokes about the victims, making memes on them, glorifying terrorists. Others turned into bloodthirsty ghouls, demanding more and more graphic content. Some even started digging up personal info about victims' families. Reddit, despite its supposed commitment to free speech, has rules against encouraging violence. But the subreddit Watch People Die claimed to be a neutral platform, a place for observing the reality of death, unbiased. For a while, Reddit let it slide. The subreddit grew, millions of followers, all united by their shared morbid curiosity, or something worse. Then came the Christchurch mosque shootings. March 15, 2019, Brenton Tarrant, an Australian white supremacist, decided to open fire on 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. He live-streamed the whole thing. The video was, unsurprisingly, incredibly graphic and disturbing. It showed the shooter murdering dozens of innocent people in cold blood, including children and the elderly. It also triggered a bunch of copycats, which was exactly what the original goon was aiming for. The video went viral. Subreddit Watch People Die, of course, was all over it. Reddit finally acted. The subreddit was banned, along with several other communities that violated Reddit's content policies. Supposedly, but the internet is like a hydra. Cut off one head, 2 more grow back and share the video of it. Subreddit Watch People Die didn't disappear. It just went underground, migrated to other platforms, reappeared on Reddit under slightly different names. Its members continued to share and consume graphic content with even less moderation than before. The admins made their own website after being banned. Now it is free from any corporate overlords or any laws. It can continue to live on and share the absolute worst of things a human being could watch or experience for years to come. And people keep watching. Some claim it's about confronting mortality, understanding the consequences of reckless behavior, looking death in the eye and accepting it, or finding a sense of community with others who share their morbid curiosity. Maybe. Or maybe they just enjoy watching people die. Kuro. Our entry point is a guy, just some random dude on Reddit called Royal Quantity 721. We'll just call him Royal for short. He was on Teen Chat. Yes, Teen Chat, a site where teenagers hang out. He wasn't there to make friends, he was there to troll, to find the cringe, the easily mockable, and well, mock them. But while he's going about his usual trolling, he stumbles upon something more than mere cringe. It's a Discord link. He clicks it, expecting the usual garbage. What he finds is something else entirely. Something that would change him forever. The Discord server is run by a guy calling himself Kuro. Real name, Aditya Mishra. 22 years old. And his server, it's full of underage girls. More specifically, it's full of pictures of underage girls. Bloody pictures, abused pictures. Kuro isn't just posting these pictures, he's boasting about them, leaving snarky comments, listing the girls' contacts, posting screenshots of his conversations with them, where he's clearly grooming them. He actually thought that forcing these vulnerable girls to say yes somehow counts as consent. Royal realizes he's looking at actual real-life child exploitation. Now this guy, Royal, he's no saint. He's a troll, but he's not this kind of monster. He's shaken, obviously. Visits a therapist twice, reports it all to the FBI and Cybertip. He's done his part, right? Wrong. Days turn into weeks. Nothing happens. The FBI doesn't follow up. Kuro keeps doing what he's doing. So Royal decides to take matters into his own hands. He starts contacting the girls. And this is where it gets complicated. These girls are victims, but they're also vulnerable. They've been manipulated. Some of them don't even realize they're being exploited, but a few do. They give Royal screenshots, logs, usernames. He starts building a network, a Discord server with friends, predator catchers, and as many of the victims as he can reach. They're organizing, documenting, trying to understand what they're dealing with. They learn that Kuro is Indian, has a thick accent, and primarily targets white and Asian girls. He's part of some neo-Nazi minor abuse cult called Harm Nation. So this guy isn't just a creep. He's a product of a much larger, much more sinister ecosystem. When Royal tries to expose him, Reddit bans him. News outlets don't respond. Even the victims, some still loyal to Kuro, leak Royal's personal info. Kuro posts Royal's number, then deletes it. Just a taste of what he's capable of. The victims are terrified. Many have terrible relationships with their parents. Some are afraid of being arrested for spreading CP. They don't want their lives ruined. They don't want their families to find out, so yeah, they stay quiet. Two of these girls live in the US. Kuro makes them do his dirty work. Extortion, spying, recruiting new victims. Kuro, feeling untouchable, apologizes after fearing he might be exposed and says he'll stop hurting girls. Then takes a U-turn and takes back his apology. Says these women deserve to have their privacy violated. He shows off his face, uses his real name, knowing he's untouchable in India. He's still out there, lurking teen chat, Instagram, Discord self-harm servers, and Twitter, finding vulnerable girls, extorting them, threatening to harm them, exposing their deepest, darkest secrets, getting them to carve his name into their skin, write him letters using their own blood as ink, and then he sells their bodies online. And the police, UK, South Korea, USA, Russia, India, all useless. No jurisdiction or unwilling to act. Royal has had enough. He's burned out, exhausted, and frankly, scared. He gives up. It's taking too much of a toll. But he can't shake the feeling that this maniac is still out there. Kuro has probably forgotten about the guy, so he's 99% sure he's safe. But what about the girls? Kuro knows their contacts, their schools, their locations. Royal feels like he's leaving these girls behind. Kuro's been known to travel to Europe. Most of his victims are white girls. He said he's going to Scandinavia in November. Is he going after girls he thinks snitched on him? Meeting up with his followers? This is the part where you're supposed to hear the resolution, but there isn't one. Kuro's still online, still hunting. Jason in Hell. This story kicks off in subreddit relationship advice. A guy, Jason in Hell, posts about his wife cheating on him with their 51-year-old neighbor, a year after he found out. Jason's the classic, typical overworked husband. He works 60-plus hour weeks. But then, his wife suddenly passwords her phone. Suspicious, she says it's to hide a Father's Day surprise she'd been planning for him. And the surprise? A home office, being built by the neighbor. Yeah, the same neighbor. Convenient, and a tad bit cliche. He gets suspicious, of course, sees her smiling at her phone, being all secretive. So he snoops, finds text to the neighbor. I'd let you read the text, but it has something to do with licking. Anyway, the neighbors start spending more time at their house, getting all busy with the home office he has to build, of course. But the office takes forever, or maybe it's being dragged on purpose. Jason gets paranoid, starts tracking her location using Google Timeline. She's turning off her GPS. Of course she is. Desperate, he installs anti-theft software on her phone, backs up her texts. The next day, she sends their 7-year-old son Tyler and 3-year-old daughter Charlie to his mom's to have a free day and tries to hook up with the neighbor, but he's busy. That night, they all went to dinner with the neighbor, his girlfriend, and his son. Yeah, even the neighbor had a son. The wives want to see Magic Mike. Jason stays home with the neighbor and the kids. This is where it gets seriously twisted. While the kids are playing video games, Jason's wife starts texting the neighbor, describing all the naughty things she wants to do to him. He reciprocates. Then, she sends him a Snapchat of her, having a fun time in a bathroom stall. She texts Jason the same picture. That was the turning point. Jason confronted her, showed her the texts, the pictures. She denies everything, says it was the first time, but he has no proof of them in the act itself. So that remains unresolved, a loose end that'll soon unravel, with deadly consequences. He says he's leaving her. She threatens to take the kids and used his past suicide attempt against him. She says it's all his fault if she fell in love with someone else. The neighbor's girlfriend defends the affair, says it can't be serious if they're not having relations. They argue all weekend, decide on a temporary separation. She'll take the kids to her mom's, but on Monday, she texts him during a meeting. Says she told the kids, and they're upset. He has to explain it to them. He gets home to find his kids crying. Jason's wife, Brandy, had told them mommy had to move out because daddy was mad at her. Jason realizes she's going to drag the kids through hell if he leaves. So he begs her to stay, swallows his pride, apologizes to the neighbor. Yeah, the guy who his wife was literally cheating on him with. Things die down. He still thinks about it constantly, worries about making her unhappy again. Then, almost a year later, she sends the neighbors pictures again. Says it was an accident. Sure, Brandy. He's a mess, can't sleep, can't focus at work, feels trapped, doesn't want to talk to anyone, forced to live with a cheater just for his kids. So he does what anyone would do. He posts on Reddit. The internet tells him to get out. So he does. He meets with a lawyer, sorts all the boring paperwork, and that's when Brandy snapped. On a Monday morning, she took Tyler and Charlie and stabbed them both in their beds. Then she called 911 and confessed. And that's not all. Brandy had tried to get Jason to sleep on the sofa rather than the air mattress in the basement. But he didn't. He was asleep, unaware that the next time he wakes up, he'll be in a nightmare. She's sentenced to 120 years in prison, but Jason's world is shattered. The woman he'd begged to stay for the kids had murdered them. And in the months that followed, her parents started fundraising for her legal defense, using Jason's last name and pictures of the children she had killed. Jason is understandably pissed, asks for advice on subreddit Legal Advice. The Reddit community rallies behind him and sets up a GoFundMe for him. But in the end, Jason deleted his Reddit account. He couldn't take the attention. But later, he resurfaced with an update. He was healing, slowly, working again, rebuilding. But the loss would never go away. He didn't want the death penalty for her. That would be too easy. He wanted her to live with what she'd done. And his final words, the last thing he said to his kids was, "I love you. Good night. I'll see you in the morning." But he didn't, because Brandy made sure of that. Dog days. This one comes from subreddit Ask Reddit. Under the usual thread, what's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out? By now, you know nothing good ever starts with a throwaway account. Our storyteller is about 10 or 11, living in a house that's likely way too big for a kid his age to be left alone in. Enter the daughter of one of the maids. Let's call her Rachel. I say one of the maids because he had plenty. She's around 14, and the two kids were drawn to each other the way unsupervised children sometimes are. A mix of boredom, innocence, and things they didn't yet understand. But there's a massive roadblock. Mom's strict rules. They flirted, not the cute kind, the inappropriate touching kind. The narrator loved animals, spent most of his time with the family's German shepherds, watching them play, fight, lick, and, mount, because that's what dogs do. But he was young, and what started as fascination turned into something he didn't have the vocabulary to question. One day, he brought up an idea, something he thought was funny. What if the dog, did something with you? And for reasons far too complicated for either of them to process, she agrees to go along. They set a day, a time, when the house would be busy. The grown-ups were distracted. And it happened. Rachel was gone a few weeks later. The staff said she took her own life.